Once, in a small village nestled between forest and river, there lived a man who carried an invisible boulder on his back. No one could see it, but he could feel it. Every morning, he woke with pain in his spine, a dull ache behind his eyes, and a heaviness in his chest. Yet when he spoke to others, he smiled. When asked how he was, he answered, "Fine, thank you." Years passed. The boulder grew heavier. His laughter became quieter. His sleep restless. He tried everything: money, relationships, distractions, even anger, but the boulder remained. Until one day, an old monk came to the village and offered him no cure, only silence. He sat with the man beneath a tree and said nothing. After a while, the man spoke. He spoke for hours of his pain, his guilt, his longing. The monk listened, then whispered only this: "The boulder isn't outside you, it is you. But it can dissolve if you learn to see it." That story, simple as it is the story of many. Perhaps it is your story too. You may not carry a visible burden, but inside, something aches. In a world of noise and movement, it's easy to forget that most suffering is silent. It wears no bandages. It bleeds no blood. It shows up as stress, loneliness, burnout, meaninglessness, a quiet war fought inside the soul. But what if there was a way not to escape suffering, but to understand it, to see it clearly, and through that seeing find release? That is the path of Vipassana, a word that means clear seeing or insight. It is not a doctrine or belief system. It is a way of looking honestly, directly, compassionately at the nature of suffering and the mind that experiences it. In the next 3 hours, we'll walk gently through the teachings of the Buddha, not as abstract philosophy, but as living truth. You'll hear stories, you'll meet seekers, you'll explore your own inner terrain. This journey is not for escape, it is for awakening. There will be no pressure to convert, no complex rituals, no lofty jargon, just simple, heartfelt wisdom from a tradition that has helped millions face their suffering with clarity and love. So if you are tired, stay. If your soul is restless, stay. If you've tried everything and still feel something missing, stay. Because sometimes the heaviest burdens are the ones we do not name. And sometimes the beginning of liberation is not an answer, but a still, silent presence that reminds us, you are not alone. 1. Understanding suffering, the first noble truth. To know pain is not to be broken, but to begin seeing clearly. There was once a young prince who had everything: wealth, youth, a beautiful wife, and a kingdom of comfort. His days were filled with music, fine food, and soft silk. From birth, his father had made it his mission to shelter the boy from all unpleasantness. No sickness, no aging, no death, just endless pleasure. And yet, one day, curiosity cracked the shell. The prince, Siddhartha Gautama, asked to venture outside the palace gates. What he found shook him. An old man, hunched and trembling, a sick man gasping for breath, and a corpse, pale and still. He had never seen such things. He turned to his charioteer in disbelief. Will this happen to me too? The answer was yes. And so began his search, not for more comfort, but for truth. This moment in the Buddha's life is not just historicality, is symbolic, because each of us has our own palace, a mental fortress where we try to keep suffering out. We fill our lives with noise, work, distractions, and dreams of perfection. But then something breaks through, a diagnosis, a heartbreak, a loss. Suddenly, the illusion of control collapses. This is where the Buddha began, with a truth so simple it is often ignored. Life involves suffering. In Pali, the word is dukkha. It doesn't just mean pain, it points to the deep, often invisible unsatisfactoriness that underlies even our happiest moments. The feeling that something is always slightly off, that nothing ever truly lasts, that we are always grasping, always resisting. To understand this first noble truth is not to be pessimistic. It is to be honest. It is to look at life not through rose-colored glasses, but through clear ones. because only what is seen can be understood, and only what is understood can be transformed. Let's explore what dukkha really is. There is the suffering of pain obvious, physical, emotional, the ache of illness, the sting of betrayal, the grief of losing someone we love. But there is also the suffering of change. Even good things bring sorrow because they are impermanent. The sweetness of a child's laughter brings the quiet ache of knowing they will grow up. A perfect vacation ends. The spark of new love dims. Everything we hold on to eventually slips through our fingers. Then there is the suffering of conditioned existence itself, a kind of existential tension, the sense that no matter how hard we try, something is missing, that under the surface, we are not fully at peace. A man once told this story. I had a good job, a stable marriage, 2 kids. Everything looked fine from the outside. But at night I couldn't sleep. There was a tightness in my chest I couldn't name. I didn't feel alive. I just felt maintained. This is the invisible boulder so many of us carry. No one sees it, but it weighs heavily. It affects how we breathe, how we talk to others, how we see ourselves. We tell ourselves, I just need to work harder, or maybe when I get that promotion, that house, that relationship. But each gain, while momentarily satisfying, fails to silence the hunger. Why? Because the hunger isn't for more, it's for understanding. Imagine someone with a thorn in their foot. They keep buying better shoes, softer soles, nicer socks, but the pain doesn't go away. Only when they stop and examine the wound can they begin to heal. The Buddha compared his teaching to a doctor diagnosing a disease. The first noble truth is the diagnosis. Suffering is here, but it's not a punishment. It's a signal, a call to look deeper. Vipassana meditation is the tool we use to investigate that signal. It means clear seeing, not changing things, not fixing them, but seeing them as they are. In practice, this means sitting quietly, closing your eyes and observing, noticing how the mind moves, how sensations arise in the body, how emotions come and go. Over time, you begin to see that suffering is not just something that happens to you, it's something that arises from how you relate to life. You feel pain, but then the mind adds resistance. This shouldn't be happening. That resistance becomes tension. That tension becomes more suffering. You lose something. But then the mind adds a story. I'm a failure. That story becomes identity. That identity becomes a prison. To understand dukkha is to gently remove the layers, to sit with the original sensation and witness it without the mental commentary. This is not easy. The mind rebels. It wants to escape. But if you stay with kindness, with patience, you begin to see the suffering dissolve like fog in the morning sun. Another practitioner described it like this. At first, meditating felt like being trapped in a room with a wild animal. My thoughts were loud, aggressive, painful. But over time, I saw that I was feeding that animal. My judgments, my fear, my need to control it kept the suffering alive. When I stopped feeding it, it grew still. It wasn't my enemy. It was my teacher. This is the wisdom of the first noble truth. Not to blame yourself for suffering, not to run from it, but to meet it with awareness and compassion. We suffer because we believe life should be different than it is. We suffer because we cling to pleasure and reject pain, because we identify with every thought that arises, because we want permanence in an impermanent world. But when we really understand dukkha, something shifts. We stop chasing illusions. We stop blaming ourselves or others. We begin to rest in reality. This resting is not apathy, it's spaciousness. It's the peace that comes from no longer fighting with life. A woman once shared, after years of anxiety, I finally sat with it. I cried, I trembled, I felt like I would break, but then something softened. I saw that my fear was just a part of me trying to protect me. I didn't hate it anymore. I held it like a child. And in that moment, I was free. This is the paradox. When we stop trying to get rid of suffering, we begin to transform it. So let me ask you, what pain do you carry that you haven't fully faced? What emotions are asking to be felt, not fixed? What if your suffering isn't a failure but a gateway? The Buddha never promised a life without pain. He promised freedom within it, not by escaping, but by understanding. And that understanding begins herewith the first noble truth. As he said, just as a lotus grows from mud, wisdom grows from suffering. Do not fear the mud. So take a breath. Allow your pain to speak. Let it be seen, let it be felt, and know. This is not the end, it is the beginning. 2. The origin of suffering, the second noble truth, where suffering begins and where it can end. Imagine a child in a market. He sees a bright red balloon, points at it, and cries until his mother buys it. For a moment, he is filled with joy. The balloon dances above him. It becomes his treasure. But soon it slips from his hand. It rises higher and higher, vanishing into the blue sky, and then screams, tears, heartbreak. In that moment, something ancient is happening. This simple story mirrors a truth found at the core of human suffering. We crave, we cling, we loosen, we suffer. The Buddha named this cause of suffering tanha word that means thirst or craving. It is the second of the four noble truths. If the first noble truth tells us that suffering exists, the second explains why it exists. But tanha isn't just about wanting balloons. It's deeper. It's the craving for life to always be pleasant, predictable, permanent. It's the thirst for things to satisfy us forever, though they never do. There are 3 types of craving that the Buddha described. E. Kamatana, craving for sensual pleasure, food, sex, comfort, stimulation. 2. Bhavatanha, craving for becoming, to be someone important, to succeed, to leave a mark. 3. Vaihava tanha, craving for non-becoming, to avoid, to disappear, to escape from pain or identity. Each craving is like a flame, and when we feed it, we get burned not because desire is evil, but because we attach ourselves to something that is always changing. Let's look deeper. I. The roots of craving. You wake up in the morning and reach for your phone. You scroll through messages, news, videos. Why? Because part of you is seeking stimulation, reassurance, connection. You want to feel in control. You want to avoid discomfort. Later, you go to work. You want praise from your boss. You want to look good in front of others. You want more money, not just to live, but to feel secure, successful, validated. We chase and chase. But behind each craving is a silent whisper, I am not enough. And so, we try to become enough through what we have, what we do, what others think of us. But here is the trap. Everything we gain will pass. The praise fades. The money fluctuates. The body ages. And so, suffering returns. A monk once said, desire is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. And yet we're told everywhere, you need more, you need better, you need to be someone. This is not to say that pleasure is wrong. The Buddha never said we should live without comfort, but he taught us to examine our relationship to desire. Are we free to enjoy and let go, or do we suffer the moment something slips from our grasp? 2. The mechanism of attachment. Let's return to the image of the balloon. What caused the child's pain? Was it the balloon flying away, or was it his belief, this is mine, I need it to be happy, I can't be okay without it? This is attachment. Attachment is not love. Attachment says, I need this. Love says, I care for this, and I let it be free. The more we identify with what we want, the more we suffer when we lose it. And in life, everything, people, things, even ideas will eventually change. In Buddhist teachings, this is called anakim permanence. Nothing stays the same, and yet we crave permanence. We build relationships and expect them to stay forever warm. We achieve something and expect the joy to stay. But everything shifts. A man once shared this reflection. I worked for 20 years to build my company. It was everything to me. But when I lost it, I realized how tightly I had wrapped my identity around it. I wasn't grieving just the loss of income. I was grieving the loss of who I thought I was. This is why clinging creates suffering. Not because things are bad, but because we mistake them for permanent sources of happiness. When they go, we feel like we're falling apart. I, the hidden craving to not feel. Perhaps the subtlest form of tanha is the craving to not experience discomfort. It's when we say, I don't want to feel this sadness. I want to numb it, distract it, suppress it. We run from loneliness into scrolling, from fear into anger, from grief into busyness. But every emotion we run from waits patiently. One woman described her insight during meditation. I realized I was addicted to distractions, not because I was lazy, but because I was terrified of sitting with myself. Underneath everything, I was scared to feel alone. The Buddha encouraged us to pause and observe even these subtle cravings, the craving to escape, to hide, to disappear. Because in that pause, in that gentle awareness, something miraculous happens. The craving begins to lose its power. We see the hunger, but we don't have to feed it. We feel the pull, but we don't have to follow it. We begin to taste freedom. 4. A story of a snake and a rope. There is an ancient Indian parable that goes like this. A man walks through the jungle at dusk. He sees a snake coiled on the path and freezes in fear. His heart races. Sweat pours from his forehead. He turns and runs. The next morning, in daylight, he returns to the same spot and sees it wasn't a snake at all. It was a rope. Craving works in the same way. We mistake illusions for necessities. We think we need the perfect job, the perfect partner, the perfect image to be whole. We fear what will happen if we don't get them. We suffer not because the snake is real, but because we believed it was. Vipassana practice invites us to return in daylight, to see clearly, to ask, is this real, or is it a projection of my craving? And when we see it's a rope, we no longer have to run. We can relax, we can smile. V. Gentle inquiry and awareness. To work with craving is not to fight it. It's not to beat ourselves up for wanting. The Buddha never said, kill desire. He said, understand it, observe it, befriend it. Watch how it arises, how it moves, how it fades. Try asking yourself, what do I believe I need to be happy? What happens in my body when I want something deeply? What emotion do I avoid the most? When you sit in meditation, notice the itch to move, to fix, to grasp. Notice how the mind jumps into planning, remembering, fantasizing. That jump that twitches tanha in action. Don't scold it, don't suppress it, just notice, name it, smile at it. This simple awareness begins to untangle the knot, because underneath craving is something very human, a longing to be whole, to be safe, to be free. The problem is not the longing, it's where we search. The Buddha offered an alternative. Search within. Look not to grasp but to see. Zi. Conclusion. A doorway to liberation. If the first noble truth opens our eyes to suffering, the second noble truth points to the root. It says, suffering is not random, it arises from a pattern. And if we understand that pattern, we are no longer prisoners. This is not about blaming ourselves. Craving is natural. It's how we've learned to survive. But now, we are invited to awaken to, see that surviving and awakening are not the same. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to give up all desire overnight. You simply begin where you are. Start by watching, then by questioning, then slowly by loosening your grip. As the Buddha said, there is no fire like craving, no trap like delusion, but there is no freedom like wisdom. And that wisdom begins when we stop looking outside and turn gently inward. In the next teaching, the Buddha goes further. If craving causes suffering, can we end it? And if so, how? That question leads us to the third noble truth, the end of suffering. But for now, simply reflect. What have I clung to? What have I feared losing? And what would it mean to sit, open-handed, with this life as it is? This is not the end of the journey, but it may be the first moment of peace. 3. The end of suffering, the third noble truth, the peace that cannot be taken away. Imagine a man wandering endlessly through a desert, sun beating down, wind whipping dust into his eyes, every step a struggle. For years he walks, convinced that thirst and fatigue are all there is. Then, Just beyond a dune, he sees something strange. A palm tree, a shimmer, a shadow. With his final strength, he drags himself forward, and it's real. An oasis. Still water, soft grass, a breeze that does not sting. He falls beside the pool and drinks, not with greed, but with reverence. The water does not make him a new man, but it reminds him of something he had forgotten. Suffering is not permanent, and so it is with the third noble truth. The first noble truth tells us that life includes suffering dukkha, the sense of unsatisfactoriness that runs beneath even joyful moments. The second noble truth explains the cause of suffering, craving, grasping, the constant thirst for things to be other than they are. And now, in the third noble truth, the Buddha offers something extraordinary. He says, "This suffering can end. This is not a metaphor. It is not poetic hope. It is the promise of inner liberation, of a peace that is not dependent on what we have, what we achieve, or what others think of us." In Pali, the word is nirodha. It means cessation, extinguishing. Imagine a fire that has burned all night crackling, loud, dangerous. But then it runs out of fuel. The flames grow weak, the heat dissipates, there is no explosion, just a soft silence. This is the image the Buddha used. When craving is extinguished, suffering naturally ceases. This cessation is not death. It is not the erasure of the self. It is the return to a quiet, undisturbed state. A man once asked the Buddha, "What do you gain by all this meditation?" And the Buddha answered, "Nothing, but let me tell you what I have lost. Anger, anxiety, fear, insecurity, depression, confusion. The end of suffering is not the addition of something new, it is the falling away of what was never truly us. We are not liberated by gaining peace. We are liberated by uncovering the peace that was already there, beneath the layers of conditioning, fear, and desire. This truth might seem abstract until you've tasted it for yourself, but you already have. Have you ever sat quietly and suddenly felt still, even if only for a moment? Have you ever stopped chasing a thought and noticed the spaciousness left behind? Have you ever allowed sadness to be there without fighting it, and then felt something open? These are glimpses of nirodha. They do not arrive through force. They come through awareness. They come when we no longer feed the fire. Often, we think suffering defines us. I am a depressed person. I have anxiety. I am broken. But the Buddha says, these are not identities. They are states, conditions that arise and pass. Just like a storm passes through the sky, emotions and thoughts pass through consciousness. You are not the storm. You are the sky. You do not have to fix the weather. You only have to remember the sky is still there. In practical terms, the end of suffering means we stop identifying with what is impermanent. We no longer build our happiness on things that change. We do not tie our peace to external conditions. Instead, we begin to rest in a deeper truth. There's a story of a woman named Mira who lost her child. The grief was unimaginable. People told her to move on, to be strong, to find purpose. Nothing helped. Until she met a teacher who simply sat with her. He did not offer advice. He offered presence. He said, "Grief is real, but suffering is what you add to it when you believe it should not be here." That night, Mira sat and allowed the grief to flood her. She did not resist. She breathed with it. She cried without judgment. And something subtle happened. The pain didn't disappear, but the tightness around it began to dissolve. The next morning she said, "I am still in pain, but I am not drowning anymore." This is the taste of nirodha. It is not always dramatic. Often, it is quiet. It is when you feel rage rise and choose not to act on it. When you notice jealousy and simply watch it. When you hear your mind scream, "I'm not enough," and you respond with a smile instead of panic. Each time you step back, each time you don't feed the craving, the fire dims. Some wonder, is this really possible for me? The Buddha's answer was always, yes. Not because you are special, but because you are human. Every human heart is capable of awakening. Liberation is not reserved for saints or sages. It is for the mother who pauses before shouting. It is for the worker who remembers to breathe. It is for the addict who sits through one more craving. The end of suffering is not an event, it is a process. It is not all or nothing. It is gradual. It is one moment at a time, and each moment matters. It begins with trust. Trust that there is another way. Trust that peace is not something to acquire, but to remember. One teacher said, if you've ever witnessed a single thought arise and pass without clinging to it, you've touched liberation. Hold that thread, follow it, let it grow. Eventually, you will come to rest not in ideas about peace, but in peace itself. Not in the concept of silence, but in silence itself. Not in the image of freedom, but in the lived knowing that nothing binds you except your own mind, and even that can be unbound. Liberation is not becoming something more, it is becoming less reactive, less attached, less identified with every passing mood. And in that less, there is more space, more compassion, more presence, more life. The Buddha described Nirvanatha state of full liberation as the unconditioned. It is not dependent on time, form, gain, or loss. It simply is. And though it sounds far, we are never separate from it. Every breath is a doorway. Every pause is a beginning. Even now, as you listen, there is a part of you that knows. A stillness beneath the noise. A watcher behind the thoughts. A clarity under the confusion. That part of you is not broken. It is not waiting to be fixed. It is already whole. The path ahead through mindfulness, ethical living, compassion, and wisdom will deepen this knowing. But this knowing begins now. Close your eyes, take a breath, let whatever you feel arise. Don't fight it, don't chase it, just watch. And as you watch, know this: you are not your suffering. You are not your craving. You are not even your thoughts. You are the one who sees. And the one who sees is already free. 4. The path to liberation. The fourth noble truth. The way home. If the Buddha had ended his teaching at the third noble truth, we would know that liberation is possible, but not how to reach it. But he did not stop there. Like a doctor who not only identifies the illness and confirms it is curable, he offered a prescription, a way, a path. The fourth noble truth is that path. It is known as the Noble Eightfold Path Knot, a rule book, not a checklist, but a living, breathing way of life. It is the cultivation of wisdom, ethical action, and mental discipline that leads not to reward in a future world, but to the profound transformation of this life, here and now. The Eightfold Path is not a ladder where one step comes before another, nor a maze to be solved, but a circular wheel where each spoke supports the whole. And so we begin with right view, the clarity of vision that allows us to see life as it truly is. Right view is not a religious belief or blind. Acceptance of teaching sit is the understanding that everything is impermanent, that suffering arises from craving, and that liberation is possible. When we see this, not just with the intellect but with the heart, our life begins to shift. The problems we thought were permanent begin to soften. The urgency of desires begins to dissolve, and we no longer live in denial of change, but learn to flow with it. From this view arises right intention, which is the seed of our motivation. It means we cultivate thoughts that are free from ill will, cruelty, or grasping. It is the willingness to let go, to be kind, and to do no harm, not because we are told to, but because our heart recognizes that these intentions bring peace, while their opposites breed turmoil. A person filled with hatred can never rest. A mind addicted to gaining can never be still. But the person who acts with the intention of renunciation, goodwill, and compassion begins to walk in freedom even before their outer world changes. These first two steps form the wisdom branch of the path, and wisdom must be lived. It must flow into the way we speak. Right speech is more than avoiding lies or harsh words. It is a conscious use of language as an instrument of peace. Every time we speak, we plant seeds. Do our words bring fear or comfort, confusion or clarity, judgment or understanding? In a world full of noise, gossip, and endless opinions, right speech is an act of sacred rebellion. We pause before we speak. We ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And when silence is the kinder choice, we honor it. From speech comes action, and so we arrive at right action, the practice of living with integrity. We refrain from killing, from stealing, from harming others with our sexuality, not because we fear punishment, but because these actions tear at the fabric of our own inner peace. Every time we act with greed, hatred, or delusion, we plant suffering. Every time we choose honesty, generosity, and nonviolence, we step out of the karmic cycle of harm. The Buddha did not impose these as commandments, but offered them as mirror reflections. Look at what your actions create in your life. The path of liberation is not in heaven, it's in how we treat our neighbor, how we care for our family, how we walk through the world when no one is watching. And this leads naturally into right livelihood, how we earn our living. The Buddha was clear: do not trade in arms, in human beings, in intoxicants, in poisons, or in anything that causes harm to others. But the deeper teaching is this: whatever our work, it should align with our values. We spend most of our waking hours engaged in some form of labor. If that labor is soaked in deception, aggression, or manipulation, it becomes a source of dukkha. But when our work is honest, mindful, and rooted in service, it becomes practice. A cleaner who sweeps with attention is cultivating mindfulness. A teacher who serves with love is walking the path. A baker who kneads dough with peace in his heart is engaged in meditation. From here we come to right effort, not frantic striving, but the careful tending of the mind. The Buddha compared it to guarding a field. We prevent unwholesome states from arising, abandon those already arisen, cultivate wholesome qualities not yet born, and maintain those that are present. This is not forceful. It is wise energy. Just as a gardener removes weeds, waters seedlings, and protects tender shoots, so we tend to our own mind, not through guilt or shame, but with diligence and love. We learn to notice when anger is rising, and we breathe. We recognize distraction, and we return. We nurture generosity, patience, and clarity not with grand gestures, but in thousands of small, unnoticed choices. All of this builds toward the heart of the path, mindfulness. Right mindfulness is the continuous awareness of body, feeling, mind, and mental objects. It is the art of living in the present moment, not as a concept, but as a direct experience. We eat, and we know we are eating. We walk, and we know we are walking. We feel pain, and we know it is pain. We do not run from discomfort, nor cling to pleasure. We simply remain awake. This awareness is not dry. It is spacious, it is intimate, it is the gentle hand that holds us through every experience. And from mindfulness flows right concentration, the unification of mind through meditative absorption. It is the ability to remain steadily focused, to quiet the chatter, to rest in a deep, luminous stillness that is already within us. Concentration is not about escape, it is about arrival. It is the fruit of the whole path. When our life is aligned, when our view is wise, when our actions are kind, when our speech is honest, and our mind is clear, then naturally we begin to taste stillness not as a distant achievement, but as home. Together, these 8 aspects form a path that is noble not because it is lofty, but because it ennobles the human heart. It gives dignity to our choices, clarity to our confusion, and purpose to our pain. It does not ask for perfection, it asks for sincerity. You do not need to walk it all at once. You only need to begin. One step in right speech, one breath in mindfulness, one moment of letting go. This path has been walked by millions of monks, nuns, lay people, mothers, fathers, children, elders. They walked it through joy and sorrow, through birth and death, through war and peace. And they discovered that peace is not found at the end. It is found in the walking. It is found in the intention. It is found in the practice. The Eightfold Path is not a theory. It is a way of being. It is not a map to another world. It is the way to be free in this one. The suffering ends not when life changes, but when we meet life with wisdom. The craving ceases not when we get what we want, but when we want what brings freedom. And that freedom begins not in a distant future, but in this breath, in this step, in this choice. So walk gently, walk mindfully, walk with trust, for the path does not lead you away from yourself. It leads you home. 5. Right view, the opening of the path, seeing clearly, living wisely. In the forest of confusion where so many of us wander, right view is the lantern that lights our way. It does not eliminate every shadow, but it shows us how to walk. It is the first spoke of the Noble Eightfold Path, not because it is the most important, but because it is the foundation. When we see life as it truly is, we begin to live differently. We move not in fear, but in awareness. We begin to suffer less not because pain disappears, but because we stop fighting reality. Right view is not just a belief system or a philosophy. It is the beginning of wisdom. It is the first clear breath after drowning in delusion. The nature of right view. So what is right view? In the teachings of the Buddha, it is the deep understanding of the Four Noble Truths, that life contains suffering, that suffering has a cause, that it can end, and that there is a path that leads to its end. But more than theory, right view is a shift in perception. It is the understanding that everything is impermanent feelings, relationships, youth, wealth, even our thoughts. It is the realization that nothing we cling to can provide lasting peace. It is the insight that we are not separate from the causes of our suffering, we participate in them. And it is the opening of the heart to the possibility that we can change. Many people live their whole lives with wrong view. They believe happiness is found in control, in accumulation, in status. They see misfortune as punishment and pleasure as a guarantee. They think of life in absolutes, good and bad, me and them, success and failure. But right view softens these rigid lines. It sees life as a flow of causes and conditions. It sees people not as enemies or heroes, but as beings shaped by suffering and longing, just like us. It replaces blame with understanding. It replaces ignorance with clarity. It replaces fear with curiosity. A story of the two farmers. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition. Two farmers lived side by side. One was constantly angry. When his crops failed, he blamed the rain. When his animals fell sick, he cursed the gods. He said life was unfair. The other farmer also faced hardship, but he remained calm. He tended his soil, cared for his animals, and when difficulties came, he said, "This too is part of life." One day, the angry farmer asked, "Why do you never complain? Don't you suffer too?" And the second farmer replied, "Yes, but I know that suffering is not personal. It is not punishment. It is nature. It is change. When I see this clearly, I find peace even in hardship." This is right view. It is not about blind optimism. It is about seeing that pain is part of the human condition, not a failure. It is about meeting suffering with understanding rather than resistance. Practical right view in daily life. In your daily life, right view can transform even ordinary moments. You are stuck in traffic. The old mind says, "This is terrible. I'm wasting time. Why is this happening to me?" But right view sees, traffic arises due to conditions. My stress comes not from the cars, but from my attachment to getting somewhere fast. With that, the shoulders relax, the breath deepens. You turn the radio off and listen to silence. You receive criticism. The habitual mind says, "This person is attacking me." But right view observes, this comment is just words, born from their perceptions. Can I listen with openness rather than defend with ego? And suddenly, the space between you and them softens. The wall drops. Something heals. You experience loss. The old view says, "This should not happen." But right view knows, everything that is born will die. Everything I love will change form. This pain is part of love. And in that knowing, grief becomes less bitter, more sacred. Right view is the art of meeting life as it is, not as we wish it to be. It is the courage to look reality in the eyes and say, "Even this, I can work with." Right view and karma. One of the most important elements of right view is the understanding of karma not as fate, but as cause and effect. Every thought, word, and action plants a seed. Those seeds grow into habits. Those habits shape our experience of the world. Right view reminds us, nothing arises without conditions. Our suffering is not bad luck. Our happiness is not random. When we truly understand karma, we begin to take responsibility, not blame, but ownership. We realize, if I want peace, I must plant seeds of peace. If we speak with anger, we grow more anger. If we act with compassion, we nurture inner freedom. This doesn't mean we control everything. Life still surprises us. But it means that how we relate to what happens is within our power. That is liberating. Right view and impermanence. Right view also includes the deep seeing of Anakim permanence. Everything changes. Every joy fades. Every pain softens. Every thought dissolves. At first, this truth feels unsettling. We want things to last. We want guarantees. But when we embrace impermanence, we discover its gift. We appreciate moments more. We let go more easily. We stop clinging to what must pass. A person practicing right view walks through the world with open hands, not closed fists. They are able to say goodbye without being broken. They are able to love without trying to possess. They are able to live fully in each breath because they know it will not come again. Right view and the not self. Another dimension of right view is the insight into a nadanon self. This does not mean we don't exist. It means the self we cling to the idea of me as fixed, permanent, separates, and illusion. When we look deeply, we see that what we call I is a collection of processes: body, feeling, perception, thoughts, consciousness, all arising, changing, dissolving. This is not frightening. It is freeing. When we stop clinging to a rigid identity, we become more alive, more responsive, more compassionate. We stop taking everything personally. We stop defending a self-image. We stop building walls around our hearts. Instead, we flow. We adapt. We see that we are not separate from life. We are life itself, unfolding moment by moment. The fruit of right view. What does right view give us? It gives us the ability to stay calm in chaos. It gives us the courage to act wisely, even when we are afraid. It gives us compassion for ourselves and for others. It gives us humility because we see how little we control. It gives us responsibility because we see how much our actions matter. It gives us peace, not the peace of escape, but the peace of deep seeing. Right view is not something you achieve in one moment. It deepens over time through reflection, meditation, and life itself. Every experience, pleasant or painful, can be a teacher. And as your view changes, so does your life. You speak differently. You love differently. You wake up each day not just surviving, but understanding. And in that understanding, you begin to be free. Right view is not dogma, it's an invitation. The Buddha never asked his followers to believe blindly. He said, "Come and see for yourself." Right view is not a belief you inherit. It is a perspective you earn through practice, through awareness, through lived experience. It grows in silence. It grows in honesty. It grows when you stop pretending to know and start listening to what is true. It grows when you sit in stillness and ask, what am I clinging to? What am I resisting? What am I not willing to see? The answers may be painful, but they will set you free. Conclusion: turning the lantern on. If your mind has ever been darkened by confusion, anxiety, or despair, you know what it feels like to stumble without direction. Right view is the turning on of the lantern. It does not eliminate every hardship, but it shows you the path. It reminds you that you are not lost, that you never were. You are not broken. You are not trapped. You are not unworthy. You simply could not see clearly. Now, the light begins to return. 6. Right intention. Planting seeds of liberation. What we choose to water. Every journey begins not with the first step, but with the reason we take that step. The feet may carry the body, but it is the heart that points the way. In the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha places right intention immediately after right view. Why? Because seeing clearly is not enough. Once we recognize the nature of suffering and its causes, we must choose how to respond. And that choice, quiet and powerful, is where liberation begins. Right intention is the silent force beneath every word we speak, every action we take, every emotion we feed or release. It is not always visible from the outside, but it determines everything. In the garden of the mind, intention is the seed. And the Buddha, like a wise gardener, asks, "What are you planting today? What is right intention?" Right intention, in the teachings of the Buddha, consists of three core elements. 1. The intention of renunciation, letting go of craving and attachment. 2. The intention of goodwill, metta, loving kindness toward all beings. 3. The intention of harmlessness, compassion, and nonviolence. These are not abstract virtues. They are living energies that shape the way we see the world. When our intention is rooted in greed, anger, or delusion, even our most polished actions become hollow. But when our intention is rooted in wisdom and love, even small gestures can be transformative. Right intention is not about suppressing desire or pretending to be saintly. It is about noticing the engine beneath your thoughts and gently, patiently turning it toward freedom. I, the intention of renunciation, letting go of craving. The first of the three is perhaps the most misunderstood. Renunciation sounds like giving up everything, becoming a monk, abandoning pleasures, living in austerity. But that is not what the Buddha meant. Renunciation is not deprivation. It is liberation from dependence. It is not about rejecting joy, but about releasing the false belief that we need certain things to be happy. The Buddha once said, "Just as a man carrying a heavy load rejoices in laying it down, so too does one who gives up craving find joy." To live with the intention of renunciation is to say, "I will not put my peace in the hands of things I cannot control." It is to know that chasing pleasure endlessly is like drinking salt water. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. You may still enjoy food, beauty, intimacy, creativity, but you do not cling. You do not demand. You do not lose yourself in the storm of desire. A modern example. Imagine a woman named Sarah. She is successful, admired, but restless. She keeps upgrading her life, new job, new clothes, new travel, but the hunger never ends. One day, in meditation, she simply sits with the feeling of lack without trying to fix it. She breathes through the ache, and something softens. She says later, "I stopped trying to fill the hole. I began to listen to it." That listening was the beginning of renunciation. 2. The intention of goodwill, opening the heart. The second intention is goodwill metta in Pali. It is the intention to wish happiness and safety for all beings, including ourselves. Where renunciation uproots craving, goodwill uproots hatred. The Buddha knew that many of our deepest sufferings come not from external harm, but from the poisons we carry inside: resentment, jealousy, bitterness. These emotions may feel powerful in the moment, but they corrode our peace over time. Goodwill is not passive. It is not naive. It does not mean approving of injustice, but it means recognizing that hatred, no matter how justified it feels, will never heal us. Goodwill is the choice to say, "Even if you have hurt me, I will not let hatred live in my heart. I wish for your awakening, not your punishment." This may seem impossible, but the path is gradual. We begin with those we love, we extend it to those we feel neutral toward, and then, slowly, to those we resent. A Buddhist story tells of Angulimala, a murderer who had taken many lives. When he met the Buddha, he dropped his weapons, wept, and became a monk. The people were outraged. "How can you forgive him?" And the Buddha replied, "If a man sets fire to the forest and then spends his life planting trees, shall we see only the fire and not the forest he grows?" Goodwill does not erase consequences, but it allows us to stop the chain of suffering in our own heart. And doth. The intention of harmlessness, choosing compassion over harm. The third intention is harmlessness, or compassion. While goodwill is the wish for happiness, compassion is the willingness to respond to suffering with care. It is the refusal to add more pain to a painful world. Right intention asks us to examine, are we moving through life with aggression or gentleness? Are we using words as weapons or bridges? Are we seeing others as threats or as beings worthy of care? Compassion begins with ourselves. Many people try to be kind to others while speaking to themselves with cruelty. They carry shame like armor, judging every thought, every feeling. But right intention says, healing begins here. If we cannot be gentle with our own wounds, how can we touch the wounds of the world? A man once shared, every time I made a mistake, I told myself I was worthless. Then one day, I remembered what my teacher said. Would you speak to a child like that? Since then, I've practiced saying, this too is part of being human. That too is compassion. The link between intention and action. Intentions are not just internal feelings. They shape everything we do. When you walk into a room, people may not know what you're thinking, but they feel your intention. Is it to impress or to connect? To judge or to understand? To compete or to support? Right intention is the quiet signal we send to the world and to ourselves. It's the tone behind our voice, the posture behind our decisions, the flavor of our presence. When our intention is clear and kind, our speech softens, our actions align, and our relationships become spaces of trust and openness. Intention in meditation practice. In meditation, we return again and again to intention. Why am I sitting? Is it to fix myself, to escape, to achieve a goal? Or is it to be present, to be kind, to remember? The Buddha said, with our thoughts, we make the world. And meditation is the training ground where we observe those thoughts and choose which ones to water. Even when the mind wanders, returning with kindness is itself right intention. Living with right intention in the modern world. Today's world is full of noise, competition, and confusion. It is easy to be swept into patterns of selfishness, comparison, and fear. But right intention offers an antidote. It says, begin your day not with a to-do list, but with a question. What do I intend to bring into the world today? Before a conversation. What is my deepest wish for this moment? Before a decision, am I acting from love or from fear? You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to get it perfect. You only need to return to the question again and again. And each time you do, something in you remembers. This path is not about being holy. It is about being real, being honest, being kind, being awake. Intention is the beginning of everything. Right intention is not a destination. It is a compass. It does not promise that life will be easy or that we will never stumble, but it ensures that when we fall in the direction of wisdom. It ensures that when we are lost, we are still facing home. The Buddha did not ask us to suppress desire, hatred, or fear. He asked us to see them, understand them, and choose another way. That choice begins with intention. So today, pause. Listen to your heart. Ask gently, what seeds am I planting with this thought, with this word, with this breath? And remember, the seed you water is the tree you become. 7. Right speech, the power of our words. Speaking from the heart of silence. There is a story in the Buddhist tradition of a man who came to the Buddha and asked, what is the most dangerous weapon in the world? The Buddha replied, a word spoken in anger. The man looked confused, expecting perhaps a sword or a spear. But the Buddha went on, words cut deeper than knives, and their wounds are slow to heal. This teaching begins to uncover the depth of what the Buddha meant by right speech, the third step in the Noble Eightfold Path. In a world overflowing with noise, opinions, gossip, and emotional reactivity, right speech is not merely a discipline, it is a sanctuary. It is a commitment to using our voice as a bridge instead of a blade, as a balm rather than a bomb. Words shape the worlds we live in. They form the stories we believe, the identities we inhabit, and the emotions we carry. They can nurture peace or ignite wars within ourselves and in others. With every word we speak, we are planting seeds. The question is, what are we growing? The 4 aspects of right speech. In his teachings, the Buddha described 4 types of unwholesome speech we are invited to avoid. 1. False speech, lying, deceiving, distorting the truth. 2. Harsh speech, words spoken with anger, cruelty, or contempt. 3. Divisive speech, gossip or slander, meant to create separation, idle chatter, speech that is useless, distracting, or meaningless. And their opposites, truthfulness, gentleness, unity, and meaningful silence are the foundations of right speech. Let us explore each, not as commandments to obey, but as practices of love and awareness. False speech, living in truth. Lying is more than bending the facts. It is abandoning the ground of trust on which all relationships, including the one with ourselves, must stand. When we lie to others, we are also lying to ourselves because we fear that the truth is not safe or not enough. Yet truthfulness is not about being brutally honest or weaponizing facts. It is about alignment, allowing our words to match our inner reality. Sometimes, truth means saying, "I don't know." Sometimes it means being silent until clarity arrives. A monk once said, "Every time I speak what is false, I feel like I borrow a little piece of peace from the future, and eventually the debt must be paid." Truthful speech is gentle and brave. It does not puff itself up, nor shrink back. It says what is real without drama, without manipulation, and with humility. In your life, ask, do my words reflect what is true? Do I exaggerate to gain favor? Do I stay silent when truth is needed? And what would it feel like to live in the clarity of honesty? 2. Harsh speech, the poison of anger. Words spoken in anger are like arrows dipped in venom. Even if we later remove them, the sting remains. Harsh speech doesn't just wound others, it hardens our own hearts. It creates a residue of violence inside us, one that affects the tone of our inner voice. Right speech asks us not only to avoid yelling or insults, but to pay attention to tone, intention, and energy. You can say the right words with a cutting tone and still cause harm. A woman once reflected, "I realize I spoke to my partner as if I were in a courtroom, not a home. I always had to win. But in winning, I lost something more precious: connection." Gentle speech is not weakness. It requires restraint, awareness, and compassion. It is the kind of speech that allows others to stay open, even when the topic is difficult. Practice this. Before speaking, pause, feel your body. Ask, is what I'm about to say rooted in love or in my need to defend or dominate? If the answer is the latter, wait, breathe. Return when love can guide your voice. 3. Divisive speech, the slow erosion of trust. Gossip is so ordinary we barely notice it. Yet it is one of the most destructive forms of speech. It pretends to bond us with others, but it corrodes the fabric of trust. Divisive speech includes backbiting, rumors, and speaking ill of others behind their back. The Buddha warned that it not only harms the target, but also poisons the speaker. When we speak badly of others to make ourselves feel superior, we diminish ourselves. When we stir conflict to feel powerful, we become spiritually weak. Instead, right speech invites us to speak in ways that bring people together rather than apart. It asks us to be a voice of reconciliation. This does not mean avoiding the truth when harm is real, but it means we address issues directly and with care, not by turning others into characters in our drama. A practice. When tempted to speak about someone who is not present, ask, would I say this in front of them in the same tone? If not, pause. Idle chatter, the value of silence. In our time, meaningless speech may be more common than ever. We fill every silence with sound scrolling, sharing, responding, but much of it is empty. It distracts. It dissipates our attention. The Buddha urged us to avoid frivolous talk not because fun is bad, but because the mind that constantly babbles never rests. Idle speech includes jokes that hurt, comments that flatter but are insincere, and talk that avoids the truth we don't want to face. Right speech values meaning over noise. It knows that silence, too, is a form of communication. In fact, silence is often the most honest response. One teacher said, "Before I speak, I ask, is it necessary? Is it helpful? Is it beautiful? If it's not two of the three, I wait." In your life, try this. Spend 1 hour without speaking. Simply observe. Feel the urge to fill the space. Ask, what am I trying to avoid by talking? You may find your relationship with words begins to change. Right speech begins within. We often think of speech as what we say to others, but right speech also includes the way we talk to ourselves. Do we scold ourselves with cruel thoughts? Do we replay our mistakes with a voice of shame? Do we call ourselves names we would never call a friend? The inner critic is often our first teacher in harshness. Right speech says, begin again. Speak to yourself with tenderness. Use words that heal. Say to yourself what a wise friend would say, it's okay, you're trying. Let's take one breath at a time of right speech, when practiced inwardly, softens the soil in which all other virtues can grow. Words as practice, not perfection. No one walks the path of right speech perfectly. We all slip. We all say things we regret. What matters is not perfection, but presence. When you catch yourself in a lie, admit it. When you speak harshly, apologize. When you gossip, reflect. And when you are silent when truth is needed, speak next time. Each moment is a chance to realign your voice with your heart. This path is not about restriction. It is about liberation through awareness. A parable, the jar of honey. A young monk once asked his teacher, how do I know if my words are right speech? The teacher handed him a jar of honey. Each word, he said, should be like this honey sweet, nourishing and offered with care, but too much, and the sweetness turns to stickiness. Too little, and the gift is lost. And speak, he continued, as if your words were offerings at the altar of truth. The healing power of right speech. When we speak with awareness, our relationships change. Conflicts become conversations. Silence becomes sacred. Laughter becomes pure. We begin to listen more, defend less. We begin to speak from a place of stillness, not reaction. We begin to trust our voice again, not because it is always clever, but because it is rooted in care. This is the power of right speech. It is not loud, it is not flashy, but it carries truth. And truth, when spoken with love, can heal even the oldest wounds. Conclusion, a voice that brings peace. In a world hungry for connection, right speech is a revolutionary act. It is the choice to be careful when others are careless. It is the choice to be kind when the world is harsh. It is the choice to pause, to feel, to speak not from fear or habit, but from the still point within. So the next time you speak, ask yourself gently, is this true? Is this kind? Is this useful? Is this my highest voice? And if it is speak with courage, speak with heart, speak like someone who knows that every word matters, because it does. 8. Right action. Living in harmony with life, a life that does no harm. There is a simple phrase in Buddhism that holds immense weight. Avoid evil, do good, purify the mind. And at the heart of this trio stands right action. It is the fourth step of the Noble Eightfold Path, the bridge between intention and embodiment. It is how we take our inner clarity and carry it into the world. Right action is not about perfection or moral superiority. It is about harmony with ourselves, with others, and with the rhythms of life itself. It asks, how do we live in such a way that we cause the least harm and cultivate the most peace? Every action, like a stone dropped in a pond, creates ripples. Some reach far beyond what we can see. Right action is the practice of dropping stones gently, mindfully, lovingly, knowing that every step we take echoes in the world around us. The foundation of ethical conduct. In the Buddha's teachings, right action is rooted in 3 basic ethical commitments. 1. To abstain from killing. 2. To abstain from stealing. 3. To abstain from sexual misconduct. These may sound like rules, but they are more than that. They are invitation calls to wake up from unconscious harm and to begin living with awareness and care. Let us walk through each one, not as rigid commandments, but as doors to deeper compassion and wisdom. I, to refrain from killing, reverence for life. The first precept is the commitment to do no killing not just of humans, but of all sentient beings. In its most basic form, this means not committing violence, but in its deeper form, it means cultivating reverence for life itself, to walk with the awareness that every living thing desires to live, to breathe, to be free from pain. In a world where violence is normal as den speech, entertainment, politics, this precept is radical. It challenges us to examine not only what we do with our hands, but what we cultivate in our hearts. Refraining from killing includes the way we treat animals, the environment, and even ourselves. For self-harm, addiction, or constant inner criticisms, these too are forms of violence. There's a story of a monk who refused to swat a mosquito, even as it bit him. Someone asked, "Why would you suffer that pain?" And he answered, "This small life wants to live just as I do. If I can endure this moment and not harm, why wouldn't I?" We may not live like that monk, but we can begin with small choices. Choosing kindness over aggression, choosing to protect rather than dominate, choosing to pause rather than lash out. 2. To refrain from stealing, honoring what belongs to others. The second principle is to not take what is not freely given. Again, this extends beyond literal theft. To steal is to act from a mindset of lacto, believe there is not enough, so I must take. It is a symptom of disconnection from our own inner abundance, from the humanity of others. Stealing includes dishonesty in business, exploitation in relationships, taking advantage of others' trust or time, even subtle manipulations, pressuring someone into saying yes, hoarding more than we need, using someone emotionally can be forms of this violation. The practice of right action in this area teaches generosity. It says, trust there is enough, trust you are enough, and honor the boundaries of others as sacred. A beautiful teaching from the Dhammapada says, the scent of virtue is greater than the scent of sandalwood. When we live with integrity, even if we have little, we are rich. 3. To refrain from sexual misconduct, respect and responsibility. The third commitment is perhaps the most personal and complex, to avoid sexual misconduct. This does not mean renouncing pleasure or love. The Buddha was not against intimacy, he was against using others for gratification, harming others through desire, or betraying the sacredness of trust. Sexual misconduct can be physical, emotional, or energetic. It includes infidelity, coercion, deceit, objectification, or engaging in relationships that cause pain rather than healing. The spirit of this precept is respect for ourselves, for our partners, for the power of sexuality itself. To live rightly in this realm is to see intimacy not as a transaction, but as a sacred exchange zone that requires honesty, consent, and deep care. There is a Zen saying, the body is a temple, do not let it become a marketplace. Ask, does this action come from love or loneliness? From respect or impulse? From integrity or desire to control? Right action invites us to bring mindfulness even into our most private moments, because these are often the ones that define our path. Beyond the precepts, the spirit of non-harming. The ethical conduct described in right action is more than a list of don'ts. It is an embodied path of compassion in action. Each time we choose not to harm, we create space for healing. Each time we choose to be honest, we create space for trust. Each time we choose care over craving, we grow in dignity. Right action is not always easy. It may mean letting go of certain habits, relationships, or advantages. It may mean being honest when it's inconvenient. But what we gain is far greater than what we lose. We gain peace of mind, the priceless gift of knowing we are not living in contradiction with our deepest values. Action is the mirror of the mind. The Buddha taught that our actions reflect our thoughts. If we want to change our karma, we begin with action. You may not be able to control what arises in your mind, but you can choose how to act. This choice, made again and again, reshapes the mind itself. A man once shared, I used to have a bad temper. I thought I couldn't help it, but every time I chose not to yell, something softened inside. Eventually, I didn't feel like yelling anymore. Oh, this is how right action transforms us. Not through shame, not through fear, but through the steady practice of living as we wish to be. The ripple effect of ethical living. When we live with right action, our life becomes a blessing to others. Our presence becomes a refuge. Our words become trustworthy. Our example becomes inspiration. We create safety not just for ourselves, but for the people around us. Imagine a workplace where no one gossips, where people own their mistakes, where kindness is practiced, not just preached. Imagine a home where honesty is normal, where anger is met with breath, where children learn compassion by watching it. This is not a fantasy. This is the fruit of right action, grown in daily life. The story of the tree and the wind. There's a parable of a great tree in the middle of a forest. The wind came often to test it, shaking it, howling around it. But the tree stood firm. Its roots were deep. Animals made homes in its branches. Birds sang from its leaves. Travelers found shade under its arms. One day, a young sapling asked, "How did you become so strong?" And the tree replied, "Every time the wind blew, I chose not to resist with anger, nor bend with fear. I stood still and grew." Right action is like that tree. It may not always protect us from difficulty, but it gives us strength. It grounds us, and in time, it becomes a refuge for others. Practicing right action in daily life. Right action is not limited to grand decisions. It lives in small choices. Returning the wallet you found on the sidewalk, choosing not to speak ill of a coworker, apologizing when you've caused harm, saying no to something that doesn't align with your values, caring for animals, nature, and your own body, being mindful in your sexuality, your consumption, your power. It is not about being perfect. It is about being awake. Every day offers 100 opportunities to practice. Each moment is a chance to align your actions with your heart. Conclusion. Let your life be a blessing. Right action is not just about following rules. It is about becoming the kind of person whose life is a blessing. It is about integrity not as an image, but as a reality. It is about walking through the world without leaving a trail of harm behind. It is about acting in a way that allows you to sleep peacefully, love fully, and die without regret. The Buddha did not say, "Be perfect." He said, "Be mindful, be kind, begin again." And so we begin, not with fear, but with faith, not in the path, but in the heart that chooses to walk it. Let your hands do no harm. Let your feet walk gently. Let your life become a whisper of peace in a noisy world. This is right action, and it is always, always possible. 9. Right livelihood, bringing integrity into our work. Let your work be a blessing. Each morning, millions of people wake up, get dressed, and head into their workday. Some feel fulfilled, others burdened. Some move with purpose, others with resignation. Yet beneath the busyness, beneath the striving and effort, a quiet question lives in many hearts. Does my work matter? Does it hurt or help? Can I make a living without losing myself? This question lies at the core of the Buddha's teaching on right livelihood, the fifth step in the Noble Eightfold Path. If right action is about how we move in the world, then right livelihood is about how we sustain ourselves within it. It asks us to look deeply at what we do for a living, how we do it, and why. Right livelihood is not about wealth or poverty, prestige or obscurity. It is not about what job you have, but about the impact your work has on the world and your own heart. It is an invitation to align our means of earning with our highest values, to live in such a way that we do not sacrifice our integrity for our income. The Buddha outlined 5 kinds of livelihood to avoid: dealing in weapons, human trafficking, meat production or slaughter, intoxicants, and poisons. But these are examples, not limits. The deeper message is clear. Avoid any livelihood that causes harm to others, whether physically, emotionally, ethically, or spiritually. But what does this look like in modern life? It means we do not deceive, manipulate, or exploit others for gain. We do not work in industries that profit from addiction, violence, or environmental destruction. We do not earn in ways that corrode our conscience or separate us from compassion. This does not mean we all become monks or activists. It means that Whatever our role, a teacher, builder, designer, nurse, artist, engineer, we work with awareness. We ask, does this job support life or diminish it? Does it align with the kind of world I want to live in? Does it leave me feeling whole or hollow? Right livelihood does not require a perfect job. It requires a conscious one. A man once came to the Buddha and said, I am a butcher. This is how I feed my family. Must I give it up to walk the path? The Buddha looked at him with compassion and said, each step toward less harm is a step toward liberation. Begin where you are. This is the essence of the teaching. It is not about judgment. It is about intention, honesty, and gradual transformation. In today's world, we may not deal in weapons or poisons, but we may sell products we don't believe in. We may work for companies that prioritize profit over people. We may perform tasks that feel disconnected from our spirit. And so the question becomes, how do we bring integrity into such spaces? First, by remembering that livelihood is not just a job, it is part of our dharma or path. It is where we spend much of our energy, attention, and time. If our work drains our joy, divides our mind, or numbs our heart, then it is not just work that suffers, our entire spiritual life is affected. Right livelihood asks us to make our work an extension of our values, not an exception to them. This does not mean every task is glamorous or perfectly aligned, but it means we bring mindfulness into how we show up. A janitor who cleans with care and kindness may walk the path more truly than a CEO who exploits thousands. A school teacher who sees each child as sacred, a cashier who offers warmth to every customer, a programmer who writes code that protects instead of manipulates all, are living examples of right livelihood. Sometimes, our jobs are not ideal. Economic pressures, family obligations, and social structures may limit our options. But even then, we can bring the spirit of this practice into how we work. We can be honest in our dealings. We can treat colleagues with respect. We can refuse to compromise what matters most. Right livelihood is not a demand for perfection. It is a call to consciousness. If you are in a job that feels misaligned, start with small changes. Speak truth where you can. Bring compassion into your workplace. Look for ways to shift your role or transition to something new, not with panic, but with purpose. And if you are seeking work, do not only ask, what will pay me most? Ask also, what will let me sleep in peace? What will serve life, not just my own comfort? In Buddhist tradition, there is a story of a craftsman who made cooking pots. He took pride in his work, but one day he realized that the pots he made were often used in animal slaughter. Troubled, he began making alms, bowls for monks instead. Though he earned less, he said, now my hands serve what nourishes. This story is not about asceticism, it is about alignment. When our work becomes service, whether to people, beauty, truth, healing, or wisdom, it becomes a form of practice. It becomes a vehicle of liberation. Right livelihood also includes how we relate to money. Money itself is not good or bad. It is a tool, but how we earn it, spend it, and think about it reveals much about our inner state. Do we earn with fear or freedom? Do we hoard or share? Do we define our worth by our income? The Buddha encouraged a middle path, not poverty for its own sake, nor wealth for its own glory. He taught simplicity, sufficiency, and generosity. He taught that true wealth is not what we possess, but what we release. A person who earns modestly but sleeps peacefully is wealthier than one who earns millions but lives in anxiety and deceit. Right livelihood is also about sustainability, not only ecological, but emotional. Work that exhausts the soul, that leaves us numb or constantly anxious, cannot be called right, no matter how noble it appears. If it costs us our presence, our health, our joy, it is too expensive. So ask yourself often, is my work aligned with my values? Does it nourish or deplete me? Is there a way to serve life more deeply through what I do? Sometimes this will mean changing jobs. Sometimes it will mean changing how we relate to the job we already have. Sometimes it means bringing mindfulness into mundane tasks and discovering meaning where we thought there was none. There is no single answer, but the question must be asked. You may be a nurse, changing wound dressings in silence. You may be a garbage collector, rolling bins in the dawn. You may be a coder writing software to serve nonprofits. You may be a farmer planting seeds for the next harvest. Whatever your work, when done with intention and love, it becomes sacred. In the end, right livelihood is about creating harmony within yourself and between yourself and the world. It is about refusing to divide work from spirit, economics from ethics, success from sincerity. It is about letting your life speak not only in meditation or poetry, but in every meeting, every task, every paycheck earned with care. May your work nourish you. May it not cost you your soul. May it ripple outward and become a quiet blessing to all beings. This is the heart of right livelihood, and it is always possible. 10. Right effort, tending the garden of the mind. There is a teaching in early Buddhism that compares the mind to a field. In this field lie the seeds of everything love and fear, clarity and confusion, generosity and greed. What takes root and grows depends not only on the weather of life, but on the effort of the one who tends it. The Buddha called this tending right effort. Right effort, the sixth element of the Noble Eightfold Path, is the conscious energy we bring to shaping our inner life. It is not the effort of striving or struggling. It is not harsh, frantic, or driven by the fear of failure. It is the steady, compassionate, and wise care of a person who knows the mind is powerful and fragile, and that transformation is possible through love and attention. To practice right effort is to live with the courage to care for what arises in us. It is a form of spiritual gardening. The Buddha described this effort in 4 dimensions, known as the 4 great efforts. 1. To prevent unwholesome states from arising. 2. To abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. 3. To cultivate wholesome states not yet arisen. 4. To maintain and deepen wholesome states already present. These are not rules. They are invitations to become skillful gardeners of the mind-removing weeds, planting seeds, watering what is beautiful, and protecting it as it blooms. 1. Preventing the arising of unwholesome states. The first effort is like placing a protective fence around your mental garden. It is the effort to prevent suffering before it starts by guarding the gates of our sense impressions, intentions, and choices. This doesn't mean shutting down or avoiding life. It means knowing the patterns that bring agitation, craving, jealousy, or rage, and wisely adjusting our relationship to them. For example, if scrolling through certain kinds of content online always leads to envy, we pause. If visiting a particular person always results in gossip or bitterness, we prepare ourselves or set boundaries. Prevention is rooted in mindfulness and discernment. It's not rigid control, but intelligent care. Just as you wouldn't leave food outside to attract pests, you don't expose your mind to conditions that breed harm. One practitioner said, "I used to think strength meant confronting everything. Now I know strength also means walking away from what darkens my heart." Preventing unwholesome states begins with awareness. What do I let into my mind? What waters my anger or fear? What keeps me awake in a good way, and what keeps me awake in torment? This form of effort is kind. It sets up the day with intentions of peace. It says no to the unnecessary pain. It says yes to protecting joy. 2. Abandoning unwholesome states that have arisen. No matter how skillful we are, storms will still visit our inner skies. Anger flares, doubt swells, desire claws. This is not failure, this is nature. But here too, we have choice. The second form of right effort is about letting go, not by force, but by turning toward what has arisen with clear eyes and a soft heart. The Buddha never condemned us for having dark thoughts. He simply said, don't feed them. Don't build a house for your hatred. Don't serve tea to your jealousy. See them, bow to their presence, then let them pass. Imagine a fire growing in your home. Would you panic, or would you open the windows, remove the fuel, and guide the flames out? That is how we treat unwholesome states with wisdom, not war. A story is told of a woman who carried deep resentment toward her sister for years. In meditation, she was told not to suppress it, but to sit with it. She imagined her resentment as a wild dog barking. Instead of yelling back, she gave it space. It calmed. She listened to its pain. Over time, it transformed not by being crushed, but by being understood. To abandon what harms us is a great kindness. It is not weakness. It is liberation. 3. Cultivating wholesome states. This is where the joy begins to bloom. Right effort isn't only about removing the weed sits, about planting flowers. It's about growing the inner qualities that bring peace, clarity, courage, and compassion. How do we cultivate these wholesome states? We begin with small acts. We practice generosity giving, our time, our smile, our patience. We speak truth kindly. We meditate not to become perfect, but to become present. We reflect on gratitude. We sit in nature. We listen deeply to a friend. These small choices are not small in effect. Each one is a drop of water falling onto a seed within, and slowly the seed responds. The Buddha said, "What one frequently thinks and ponders upon becomes the inclination of the mind." This is one of the most hopeful truths in all of Buddhism. We are not fixed. The mind is not a jail, it is a garden, and we are free to tend it. One monk compared cultivation to tuning a flute. You do not scream into it, you breathe gently, and with practice, the right notes come. If you wish for more joy, begin with noticing what brings even a little lightness. If you wish for more compassion, begin by softening to yourself. These are not goals, they are seeds. 4. Maintaining wholesome states. Finally, the most delicate of the 4 efforts, protecting the goodness we have grown. So often, we catch a glimpse of insight, love, or peace and then rush past it. We taste freedom in meditation and then scroll our way out of it. We forgive, but forget to live in that forgiveness. Maintaining wholesome states means creating space to dwell in what is sacred, to let peace sink in, to return to clarity again and again until it becomes home. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room. You don't walk away and expect it to keep burning forever. You tend the flame. You protect it from the wind. You stay nearby. In practice, this means revisiting moments of love and insight, writing them down, breathing into them, letting them become a part of your memory not as ego, but as medicine. It means recognizing joy and not rushing, sitting with calm like it's a dear friend, allowing beauty to change us. A teacher once said, "The good in you needs your company." This is the heart of the 4th effort. Effort without struggle, the middle way. Sometimes people misunderstand right effort as pressure, as if we must constantly do more or try harder. But true effort in the Dharma is not strain. It is balance. It is the middle way between laziness and pushing. It's the rhythm of breath knot held too tight, not let go too loose. Think of how you care for a beloved garden. You do not rip the weeds violently. You do not water with a fire hose. You show up each day. You adjust to the season. You do your part, and nature does hers. The same with the mind. If you meditate for 5 minutes with love, that is right effort. If you catch one moment of irritation and soften into patience, that is right effort. If you simply pause to notice your breath before answering a harsh email, that is right effort. It's not about becoming a Buddha overnight. It's about choosing this path over and over gently, joyfully. There's a famous teaching where the Buddha asks a tired monk, "Were you once a musician?" The monk says yes. The Buddha replies, "Then you know, if the string is too tight, it breaks. If it is too loose, it does not play. Tune your effort like a lute." This is how we walk the path, not sprinting, not sleeping, but tuning our energy until it sings true. The fruit of right effort. What happens when we live this way? We begin to trust our own heart. We become less reactive, more responsive, less tangled in self-hate, more grounded in self-respect. We don't become saints' way, become real, tender, wise, resilient. The garden of the mind becomes a refuge. Yes, weeds still appear, but we know how to pull them. Yes, storms still come, but we know how to wait them out. We become gardeners of our own awakening. Right effort reveals that transformation is not a miracle. It is a practice. It is planting, pulling, watering, protecting, day by day, moment by moment. And in time, the flowers bloom, not for show, but because that is what a tended garden does. It blooms. 11. Right mindfulness, the art of deep presence. Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake. You toss in a small stone, and ripples spread quietly across the surface. You see them, clearly noticing each circle, how it grows, how it fades. This is the nature of mindfulness, the gentle watching of what arises, moment by moment, with care and clarity. Right mindfulness is the seventh step of the Noble Eightfold Path, and perhaps one of the most well-known in the modern world. But mindfulness, as the Buddha taught, is not just a technique for reducing stress. It is a way of living, a way of being awakened not only to joy, but to suffering. Not only to the breath, but to the entire experience of being human. The Pali word for mindfulness is sati, which means to remember. In this context, it means remembering the present moment, remembering to come home to your body, your breath, your heart, not to judge what is happening, but to see it clearly, to make peace with what is real. The Buddha outlined 4 foundations of mindfulness, called the Satipatthana. These are not steps to be mastered in sequence, but domains of awareness to be touched again and again. 1. Mindfulness of the body. 2. Mindfulness of feelings. 3. Mindfulness of the mind. 4. Mindfulness of mental objects, dhammas. Let us walk through them slowly, gently like placing our feet on sacred ground. E. Mindfulness of the body. To begin with, the body is to return to what is always present. Your body does not exist in the past or future. It exists here. It breathes. It moves. It aches. It opens. In the practice of right mindfulness, we start by noticing the breath not because it's magical, but because it's immediate. The breath is always with you. When you follow the breath without changing it, without controlling it, you learn to stay. You learn to observe the rhythm of life without clinging or resisting. But mindfulness of the body goes far beyond the breath. The Buddha taught that we can observe the body in all its postures walking, standing, sitting, lying down. We can bring attention to every movement, even brushing our teeth or tying our shoes. We become intimate with the lived experience of embodiment. This kind of attention dissolves the illusion that we are separate from life. It grounds us. When we are lost in fear or fantasy, we return to the soles of our feet. When the mind spins, we feel the cool air on the skin, the rise and fall of the belly, and it deepens. The Buddha also encouraged us to reflect on the impermanence of the body, not in a morbid way, but in a liberating one. To see the body as a changing process, not something to cling to, but something to care for, something to honor, not worship. In this way, mindfulness of the body becomes a refuge. You do not have to escape your life to be present. You just have to come home to it. 2. Mindfulness of feelings. In this context, feelings doesn't mean emotions like sadness or joy. It means the basic tone of each experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Every moment we live has a flavor. We taste it through the body, through the senses, through the mind. The practice here is to notice these feelings without being swept away by them. Imagine touching something warm. Immediately, you register pleasure. Your mind might say, "I want more of this." That's how craving begins. Or you stub your toe unpleasant. Instinctively, you might tense up or get angry. But mindfulness allows you to pause, to feel the heat of pain or the warmth of joy without automatically reacting. Mindfulness of feelings teaches us to recognize this is pleasant, this is unpleasant, this is neutral, that's all. Not this is good, so I must chase it. Not this is bad, so I must push it away. We learn to ride the waves, not drown in them. This may seem simple, but it is profound. So much of our suffering arises from not seeing our feelings clearly. We cling to what feels good. We fight what feels bad. We ignore what feels neutral. And in doing so, we lose our freedom. With practice, we begin to stay, to breathe through discomfort, to enjoy beauty without grasping, to see boredom not as an enemy, but as a doorway to deeper presence. This is not numbness. This is intimacy. 3. Mindfulness of the mind. This foundation is like looking into a mirror. We observe the mind, not its contents, but its state. Is the mind calm or restless? Focused or distracted? Expansive or contracted? We learn to name what is present. Ah, there is anger. This is worry. Now the mind is dull. Not to fix it, not to judge it, but to see clearly what is alive. This kind of watching is powerful. When we identify with every thought, we suffer. But when we watch the mind with tenderness and curiosity, we begin to recognize its patterns. We notice how thoughts come and go, how moods rise and fall. You might sit to meditate and notice the mind is like a monkey swinging from one branch to another. Instead of trying to cage it, you simply watch. Eventually, the monkey settles. This practice is not about stopping thought. It's about changing our relationship to thought. You realize, I am not my anger. I am not my fear. These are visitors. I can observe them, learn from them, and let them go. Over time, the mind becomes clearer, less reactive, more like the surface of a quiet lake able to reflect the world without distortion. 4. Mindfulness of mental objects, dhammas. This last foundation may sound abstract, but it is deeply practical. It involves becoming mindful of certain key categories of experience that shape our inner world. The Buddha spoke of 5 main areas. The 5 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, doubt. The 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. The 6 sense bases: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and their objects. The 7 factors of awakening: mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity. The 4 noble truths. You do not need to memorize them all. What matters is that mindfulness becomes a lens through which you see the deeper dynamics of suffering and freedom. For example, you might notice the hindrance of doubt. Why am I doing this practice? Does it even work? With mindfulness, you name it. This is doubt. You don't suppress it. You investigate it. Over time, it loosens its grip. Or you notice the arising of joy during meditation. You feel lightness, warmth. Mindfulness allows you to rest in that joy, to know it, to appreciate it, and to watch it pass without clinging. This foundation brings wisdom. It connects daily experience to the heart of the Dharma. It reveals the path, not as philosophy, but as direct seeing. The spirit of mindfulness. Right mindfulness is not cold awareness. It is not robotic observation. It is warm, tender, open. The Buddha compared mindfulness to a guardian. It watches over the gates of the mind. It keeps us from acting out of habit and compulsion. It invites us to live with choice. Mindfulness is also like a lamp. It illuminates the dark corners of our experience, not to judge, but to see. And in that seeing, we are free. Perhaps most importantly, mindfulness brings us back to what is true. In a world of distraction, of spinning thoughts and endless noise, to be present is revolutionary. You learn to say, I am here. I feel this breath. I hear this sound. I notice this moment. I do not need to run. That is the beginning of peace. Living with right mindfulness. Mindfulness is not confined to the cushion. It follows you into every part of life. When you eat with awareness. You taste, you chew, you pause. When you speak with intention. You listen, you wait, you care. When you work with attention. You focus, you breathe, you return. When you suffer mindfully. You stay, you soften, you hold space for the pain. And in each of these, mindfulness becomes not just practice, but path. It becomes the thread that holds the whole eightfold path together. Without mindfulness, we cannot see clearly. Without seeing, we cannot act wisely. But with mindfulness, even washing dishes becomes sacred. Even traffic becomes meditation. Even pain becomes a teacher. The fruit of mindfulness. Over time, right mindfulness changes us. It calms the storm. It opens the heart. It brings us home. We become less scattered, less at war with reality, more patient, more awake. We begin to see that each moment is enough, that the breath is not just air, it is life, that this body, this mind, this world all are grounds for awakening, and that is the art of deep presence. That is right mindfulness. That is the path to freedom. 12. Right concentration, the stillness that frees. There is a silence so deep it does not fear sound. There is a stillness so vast it does not resist motion. There is a mind so calm it no longer clings to thought. This is the realm of right concentration, the final step on the Noble Eightfold Patha, culmination of all previous efforts, and the gateway to insight and liberation. To understand right concentration is to understand the nature of a collected mind. It is to experience consciousness drawn inward, not shut down, but opened fully, not sleepy, but sharp, not distracted, but steady as a candle flame in a windless room. What is right concentration? In the Buddha's teaching, right concentration, samma samadhi, refers specifically to deep, focused states of meditative absorption known as jhanas. These are not ordinary moments of quietude. They are profound states of mental unification where the wandering mind becomes deeply still, deeply present, deeply luminous. The Buddha described these states in 4 stages, each more refined than the last. The first jhana arises with applied and sustained thought, rapture, joy, and one-pointedness of mind. 2. The second jhana drops verbal thought and becomes more unified, filled with inner joy and radiant tranquility. 3. The third jhana lets go of rapture, dwelling in deep contentment and equanimity. 4. The fourth jhana is pure equanimity and mindfulness, free of pleasure and pain, utterly balanced. But we must be clear. Right concentration is not an escape from life. It is not zoning out. It is not hypnosis. It is a clarity so deep that all noise fades and truth reveals itself. As one teacher said, the jhanas are not the end of the road, but from there, the view is very clear. The relationship between concentration and mindfulness. It is common to confuse mindfulness and concentration, especially in modern meditation teachings. But while they are connected, they are distinct. Mindfulness, Sadie, is broad, open awareness, watching thoughts, emotions, and sensations as they arise and pass. Concentration, samadhi, by contrast, is narrow, unified attention, staying with a single object, such as the breath or a mantra, with unwavering presence. Mindfulness is like a sky that holds every cloud. Concentration is like a laser that penetrates steel. In practice, mindfulness lays the foundation. It calms the mind, gathers scattered energies, and makes us aware of the mind's tendencies. Then, with intention, we direct attention inward, not to observe everything, but to stabilize attention on one thing. And from this focus, deep absorption arises. When these two, mindfulness and concentration, are developed together, the mind becomes both spacious and stable, both insightful and serene. Entering the jhanas, the art of letting go. How does one enter these deep states of concentration? The Buddha offered no secret mantra, no rigid ritual. Instead, he gave a simple formula: ethics, mindfulness, and relaxation. You prepare the mind like you prepare a child for sleep, not by command, but by creating safety. If the mind is full of greed, hatred, and restlessness, it will never settle. But if the heart is soft, the conscience clear, and the breath steady, the mind begins to quiet. We focus gently on an object most, often the breath, not forcing it, not controlling it, just staying close like a friend. When the mind wanders, we return, not with frustration, but with patience. Gradually, the breath becomes soft, the body becomes light, the chatter fades, a sense of joy arises, not loud, but subtle, a warmth in the heart, a sense of ease. This is the doorway to the first jhana. We don't push it open. We relax into it. We let go of thought. let go of effort, let go of even the desire to reach it. And when we are ready, the mind unifies on its own. Why concentration matters? You may ask, why enter such deep states? Isn't life about being present in the world? Yea, son, that's precisely the point. Right concentration is not an escape from reality. It is a training in presence so strong, so luminous, that when you return to the world, you see it with new eyes. A concentrated mind is no longer a slave to every thought. It is no longer tossed around by every craving. It becomes like a still lakeable to reflect things as they are. From that stillness, insight arises. When the mind is unified, we can see deeply into impermanence, suffering, and not self. We begin to understand, not intellectually, but viscerally, that everything we cling to is changing, that there is no solid me behind the mask, that freedom lies not in control, but in letting go. Right concentration supports the other limbs of the path. It strengthens right mindfulness. It clarifies right view. It makes right effort sustainable. As one monk said, "A moment of true samadhi is worth more than hours of restless thinking," end quote. A metaphor of the mountain. Imagine hiking up a mountain. At the base, everything is loud and crowded animals chatter, chaos. As you climb higher, the sounds fade. The air grows still. Your vision widens. At the peak, there is silence. From there, you can see the entire valleys, rivers, forests, and villages. You see how things connect. You see the truth of the land. This is what concentration does for the heart. It lifts you above the noise not to escape it, but to understand it. From the summit of stillness, you see your own mind clearly. You see the stories you've been telling yourself. You see the wounds you've been carrying, and you begin to loosen your grip. In that space, compassion grows, because when we are no longer consumed by craving, we begin to care more deeply for life. Everyday concentration. You do not have to become a cave-dwelling monk to practice right concentration. Each day offers chances to taste it. When you listen to a friend with your full attention, without planning your reply, you are practicing right concentration. When you walk in nature and truly see the trees, feel the wind, hear the birds, you are practicing. When you sit with your breath for 10 quiet minutes and allow thoughts to pass like clouds, you are practicing. These small practices strengthen your ability to stay, to care, to return, and over time, the heart learns that stillness is not something to fear. It is something to trust. Obstacles on the path. Of course, there will be challenges. The 5 hindrances often arise: desire, aversion, sloth, restlessness, and doubt. They whisper, "This is boring. You're doing it wrong. Why bother?" But these hindrances are not enemies. They are teachers. Each one shows us where the heart still clings. Desire teaches us about restlessness. Aversion teaches us about control. Sloth teaches us about fear of depth. Restlessness teaches us about discontent. Doubt teaches us about our longing for certainty. With mindfulness, we don't fight them. We name them, we bow to them, and we return, again and again. The fruit of right concentration. Eventually, the mind becomes a friend. It no longer startles us with every noise. It no longer demands our constant attention. Instead, it opens. We begin to experience peace not as a theory, but as a fact. Joy not as pleasure, but as quiet inner well-being. Insight not as knowledge, but as direct knowing. Right concentration reveals that freedom is not found in doing more. It is found in being fully here, in this breath, this body, this heart. And from this stillness, we can move into the world with clarity and love. A final word. Right concentration is the final spoke in the wheel of the Noble Eightfold Path. But it is not an end, it is a return. A return to what was always hair beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the endless search for more. It is the discovery that in silence there is wisdom, that in stillness there is strength, that in unity of mind there is freedom. May you sit with courage. May you breathe with kindness. May your heart become still enough to hear the truth. This is the gift of right concentration, and it is yours to receive. 13. Integration. living the Eightfold Path in daily life. There is a story told of a man who came to the Buddha and asked, "What must I do to awaken?" The Buddha replied, "There is nothing you must do, just walk the path." The Noble Eightfold Path is not a ladder to climb or a race to finish. It is a way of being, a way of walking through the world with clarity, courage, and compassion. It is not a theory to memorize, but a life to live. By the time we reach the end of the Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, we begin to see that the path is not a collection of isolated practices. It is an integrated, living tapestry. Each strand supports the others. Each element nourishes the whole. The path is not separate from life. It is life lived with awareness. So what does it mean to truly live the Eightfold Path? Let us return to where we began, not in temples or theories, but in the ordinary rhythms of our day. Right view and right intention in relationships. When you wake in the morning and feel the urge to check your phone, right view reminds you that craving leads to suffering. You pause. You breathe. You begin your day with presence rather than distraction. When your partner says something sharp and anger rises, right intention asks, "Do I want to react or respond? Do I want to win, or do I want to understand?" You step away. You soften. You return, not with blame, but with curiosity. You say, "That hurt. Can we talk about it?" And in that moment, you're not just resolving conflict, you're practicing the path. Right view keeps your heart aligned with truth. Right intention keeps your mind rooted in kindness. Together, they lay the foundation for how you relate not only to others, but to yourself. Right speech and right action in conversation and conflict. Your friend calls, venting about someone who wronged them. The urge to gossip rises. Right speech whispers, "Is this true? Is it necessary? Is it kind?" You choose your words with care. You validate their pain without feeding their hatred. You speak honestly, but with love. Later, you're in a meeting. A colleague makes a mistake. You could criticize, you could stay silent, or you could gently offer support, helping them save face while correcting the issue. That's right action, just avoiding harm, but actively cultivating dignity. The path is not about perfection. It is about choosing what builds trust, what heals, what connects. In this way, every conversation becomes an opportunity for truth. Every interaction becomes a field of compassion. Right livelihood in a modern world. You may not be a monk or a healer. You might be a teacher, a designer, a mechanic, or a parent. The path does not demand renunciation. It asks for integrity. Right livelihood is about choosing work that aligns with your values, work that does not cause harm to others or to the earth. But more than that, it's about how you show up to your work. Do you bring presence? Do you treat your coworkers with respect? Do you offer your skills as a gift, not just a transaction? Even in a job you don't love, you can still practice. You can listen deeply. You can breathe through stress. You can serve with mindfulness. And if your work involves harm-selling weapons, manipulating truth, exploiting others, you ask hard questions, not from guilt, but from love. Is this the life I want to build? Is there another way? Right livelihood is not about prestige. It is about integrity. It is how we bring the path into the marketplace. Right effort as gentle discipline. You sit down to meditate. Within minutes, your mind is off planning lunch. You feel like a failure, but right effort reminds you, this is the practice. Not pushing, not judging, but returning. You smile. You begin again. Later, you notice envy in your heart. Instead of feeding it, you recognize it. You breathe into it. You choose not to act from it. That too is right effort. This is not the effort of striving. It is the effort of care. It's like tending a fire. You don't throw logs wildly. You feed it slowly. You watch it burn steady and warm. Right effort teaches us that transformation is not a dramatic leap. It is a daily tending of the heart. Right mindfulness in every moment. You're doing the dishes. The mind wants to rush. But you remember, this is water. This is warmth. This is your life. You're walking down the street. A breeze touches your face. For a moment, you're not thinking, you're simply here. You notice an emotion erysia tightening in the chest, a drop in the stomach, you name it. This is sadness. You don't resist. You don't cling. You stay. This is mindfulness, not exotic, not complex, just being awake. Right mindfulness isn't confined to a cushion. It's in every breath, every bite, every glance. It is the art of deep presence, and through it, life becomes vivid, sacred, whole. Right concentration and stillness and movement. There are moments in life when you are utterly focused playing music, watching a sunset, holding a child. Your mind is unified. You feel alive. This is the taste of right concentration. In formal meditation, it deepens. The mind grows still. The heart opens. Thought slows. Peace arises not as a thought, but as a presence. But even outside meditation, you can touch this stillness. When you pause before reacting, when you rest in a single breath, when you let the moment be enough. Right concentration teaches us that we are not scattered by nature. We can be whole. We can be still. We can live from depth, not from distraction. Integration is the practice. At first, the Eightfold Path may seem like a list of separate tasks, but over time, it becomes one path, walked with many steps. Each supports the other. Right view gives direction. Right intention gives clarity. Right speech and action build trust. Right livelihood grounds us in ethics. Right effort gives energy. Right mindfulness gives present. Right concentration gives peace. They are not stairs, they are spokes on a wheel. And when the wheel turns smoothly, it carries us forward not toward some faraway heaven, but toward intimacy with life itself. Living the path in a modern life. You are not a monk in a forest. You may have bills, children, emails, and errands, but this is where the path lives. When you choose kindness over sarcasm, you're walking the path. When you sit quietly before bed, breathing with gratitude, you're walking the path. When you say, "I'm sorry," and mean it, you're walking the path. When you say, "I don't know," and listen, you're walking the path. When you stop in the middle of your day and feel your feet on the ground, that too is the path. The Eightfold Path doesn't ask you to leave your life. It asks you to live it more fully, more honestly, more kindly. This is the sacred in the ordinary. This is awakening, not as a lightning bolt, but as a slow sunrise over your life. The path never ends. You may feel you failed. You forget to meditate. You speak in anger. You fall into doubt. That is not the end. The path is always right beneath your feet. Wherever you are, however lost you feel, you can return. You can begin again. That is the heart of the path. It is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming real, letting the path live in you. The Buddha did not give us commandments. He gave us a patha, living path, a path that you test in your own body, your own heart, your own life. It is not something you memorize. It is something you live. And the more you live it, the more you see. The path is not outside you. You are the path. Your breath, your speech, your choices, your courage, your joy. Let it guide you. Let it change you. Let it carry you home. 14. The closing, liberation, compassion, and walking the path forward. The Buddha once said, "I teach only suffering and the end of suffering." Oh, and for the past many hours, we have walked together along this path from the tangled roots of pain to the quiet opening of peace. From the first breath of awareness to the deep stillness of liberation. We've wandered through the forests of craving, climbed the hills of mindfulness, and tasted the calm waters of presence. But now, as this journey reaches its final bend, we come not to an ending but to a beginning, because the path does not end here. It continues. With every breath you take, with every choice you make, with every quiet return to the moment. This is the nature of awakening, not a final destination, but a living, breathing practice of returning. And through that return, through that gentle discipline of heart and mind, we come to know a freedom deeper than words, a freedom that does not depend on success or failure, a freedom that cannot be taken away, the journey through suffering. The First Noble Truth reminds us there is suffering. It is part of life, not because life is broken, but because we often seek permanence in what is impermanent. We want the world to stay a certain way, people to behave a certain way, our bodies to feel a certain way, but life is always moving, always changing, and so suffering arises when we cling, when we resist, when we forget that change is the rule, not the exception. You've felt this in heartbreak, in illness, in loss, in anxiety, in loneliness, and yet the Buddha did not stop there. He gave us the second truth. Suffering has a cause. It is not random. It is not punishment. It is born from craving, from ignorance, from the endless push and pull of wanting and avoiding. Bhutan, here is the miracle, there is an end to suffering. That is the third noble truth. Not by escaping life, but by meeting it with full attention and an open heart. Not by controlling everything, but by understanding deeply and letting go wisely. And the fourth noble truth offers the path. The Noble Eightfold Patha, way of life grounded in ethics, in meditation, and in wisdom. A way that does not demand perfection, but invites transformation. The path is not somewhere else. You may think, this is beautiful, but I live in the real world. I have a job, a family, fears, and flaws. Yes, and that's exactly where the path lives. In the real world, you do not need to retreat to a cave. You do not need robes or rituals. You need only one thing, the willingness to be present. To meet your own experience, with judgment, but with curiosity, not with resistance, but with care. When you are brushing your teeth with awareness, you are on the path. When you pause before yelling and choose patience, you are on the path. When you sit in the dark with your grief and let it be without trying to fix it, you are walking toward awakening. The path is not about changing who you are. It is about remembering who you are beneath the noise. It is about turning toward life instead of away from it. Compassion, the heart of freedom. As insight deepens, something beautiful happens. Compassion begins to blossom. When you see that your suffering is not personal, but part of the human experience, you soften, you forgive yourself, you stop expecting to be perfect. And then, something even more powerful. You begin to see others with the same eyes. You understand that the angry coworker may be lonely, that the rude stranger may be in pain, that the people who hurt you are not evil, but unconscious, that everyone in their own way is trying to be free. This is not weakness, this is strength. The strength to love even when it's hard. The strength to see the wound beneath the armor. The strength to wish well, even to those who do not return the kindness. This kind of compassion is not sentimental, it is fierce and wise. It says, I will not add more hatred to this world. I will be the place where the cycle ends. That is the power of the Dharma. It does not just wake you up, it opens your heart. Courage and continuity. This path takes courage. It is easier to distract yourself than to sit with pain. Easier to blame than to take responsibility. Easier to scroll endlessly than to be still. But every time you return to your breath, you are building a different kind of strength, the strength of presence. Every time you choose honesty over avoidance, patience over anger, love over fear, you are watering the seeds of awakening. And you will forget. Of course you will. The mind will wander. The heart will close. You will fall back into old habits. That's okay. The practice is not about never falling. It's about learning to fall with awareness and getting up with kindness. Again and again. You will meditate. You will forget. You will start again. You will speak kindly, then harshly, then softly again. This is the rhythm of awakening. It is not a straight line. It is a spiral. And each time you return stronger, softer, wiser, walking the path forward. Now, as you finish this final part of our shared journey, take a moment to reflect. What touched you most deeply? What did you recognize in yourself? What felt like truth? What hurt to hear but needed to be heard? Let those answers sit in your heart. Let them guide you not to some future goal, but to the present moment. Let the Eightfold Path be a compass. Let mindfulness be your walking stick. Let compassion be your map. and let your own life be the trail. You will walk this path in your own way. You may walk quickly or slowly. You may pause, get lost, and find yourself again. That's part of it. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be. You are already on the path. You always have been. And you are not walking alone. Every step you take, you walk with the Buddha, with all those who have walked before, with all those who walk beside you now, with all those yet to come. The final stillness. So now we sit together in silence, just for a moment. Let the breath rise. Let it fall. Let the body rest. Let the heart soften. Let the mind be still. No need to strive. No need to grasp. Just this breath. Just this life. Just this moment. This is the path. This is the freedom. This is home. 15. The fetters that bind the heart, breaking the inner chains. Why, after so much meditation, so much seeking, so many insights, do we still suffer? Why, even after knowing the teachings, does the heart still burn with fear, anger, restlessness, pride? Why do we still cling, still react, still feel trapped inside a mind that should be free? The Buddha knew these questions intimately. He never promised that the mere knowledge of Dharma would free us. Instead, he spoke of something more intimate, more subtle, more persistent, the fetter chains of illusion and attachment that bind the heart to suffering over and over again. These fetters are not external. They are internal patterns, knots in consciousness, hidden scripts we live by without knowing. And unless we see them clearly, name them, and gently untie them, our awakening remains incomplete. There are 10 fetters in Pali Samyohana, 10 deep-rooted habits that keep us bound to the cycle of suffering. The first 5 are called the lower fetters. They relate to our attachment to self, to form, and to sensory pleasure. The last 5 are higher fetters, more subtle, but just as binding. Together, they are the invisible prison. But to see the prison is to begin to be free. The first fetter is self-identity view, Sakaya Ditayata, the belief that there is a solid I, a permanent self behind our thoughts, our name, our story. It is not just a philosophical idea, it's how we feel in daily life. When someone insults you and anger flares, it's because the I has been hurt. When we cling to reputation, or collapse into shame, or feel unworthy, we are caught in the view of self. But the Buddha taught the self is a process, not a possession. Like a flame, it exists through conditions, but try to hold it, and it burns your hand. The second fetter is attachment to rites and rituals, silabata paramasa, the idea that external actions alone will purify us. It appears when we cling to the form of practice, but forget its essence. When meditation becomes performance, when rituals become superstition, when morality becomes pride. The path is not about appearances, it is about freedom, and freedom cannot be ritualized. The third fetter is doubt, visakicha, not healthy skepticism, but paralyzing inner conflict. It whispers, is this real? Can I do this? Am I enough? It causes us to hesitate, to give up, to remain on the shore and never step into the water. But doubt is not cured by argument, it is softened by experience. The more we sit, breathe, return, the more confidence is born, not blind faith, but trust rooted in our own practice. These first 3 fetters must be cut to enter the stream, the irreversible current of awakening. When they fall away, something shifts. The heart opens. We begin to walk the path, not as outsiders, but as those who know. The next 2 fetters are more embodied. The fourth fetter is sensual craving, kamakanda, the longing for pleasure through the 5 senses. It's not about enjoying beauty, it's about grasping, chasing, clinging. The mind that says, I need this to be happy. We all know it. The craving for food, touch, praise, comfort, stimulation, the constant movement outward. But every pleasure fades. And when we build our lives on what fades, suffering follows. To see this not as moral failure, but as law, this is wisdom. The 5th fetter is ill will, vyapada, the tendency to push away, to resent, to hate. It arises when we feel threatened, when our pain turns outward, when we believe that hurting protects us. But hatred is never holy. It burns the hand that holds it. Ill will blocks compassion, poisons perception, and separates us from the world. To loosen this fetter is not weakness, it is strength. The strength to forgive, to include, to love even what is difficult. These 5 lower fetters bind us to the sensory world, to rebirth into forms of body and pain. But even as we refine, as insight deepens and serenity grows, subtler chains appear. The 6th fetter is desire for form existence, rupa raga, the craving for refined states, beautiful meditations, blissful absorptions. It is spiritual clinging, the meditator who tastes jhana and says, "Ah, now I am awakened." But even the most radiant state is still conditioned. To cling to it is to stop short of freedom. The 7th fetter is desire for formless existence, arupa raga, even subtler. This is the attachment to immaterial realms, deep absorption into nothingness, infinite space, pure consciousness. These can be pleasant, powerful, even intoxicating, but they are still states arising, abiding, passing. Liberation lies beyond. The 8th fetter is conceit, mana, not arrogance alone, but the very act of comparison. I am better than, I am worse than, I am equal to. All are forms of conceit, all reinforce a self. Even the thought I am enlightened is rooted in I. But when this illusion drops, there is only suchness, things as they are. No more one above or below, only being. The 9th fetter is restlessness, uddhaka, the subtle agitation of mind, the inability to fully settle, even in peace. It is the echo of craving, the whisper of unfinished business. It may come as spiritual ambition or as lingering tension. But when mindfulness deepens and the heart becomes content, restlessness fades. In the final fetter, the most hidden is ignorance, avijja. Not ignorance as lack of information, but ignorance as misseeing, as forgetting the nature of impermanence, suffering, and not self, as clinging to illusion because truth is uncomfortable. This is the root of all others. When ignorance is uprooted, the whole tree of suffering falls. These 10 fetters are not abstract ideas. They are lived patterns woven into speech, into action, into perception. To break them is not to fight them, it is to see them over and over, gently, patiently, compassionately. The fetters are not evil. They are habits, and habits can be unlearned. The Buddha did not ask us to shame ourselves. He asked us to look with honesty, with care, with clarity, to observe how the sense of I arises, how craving tugs, how resistance burns, and in that observation to choose differently. The path of breaking the fetters is not sudden. It is a spiral path, winding deeper with each turn. Sometimes you will feel progress. Sometimes you will feel lost. But every time you return to presence, every time you refrain from harm, every time you soften into awareness, you are loosening a chain. And as the fetters weaken, something beautiful begins to unfold. You become less reactive, less possessive, less proud. You stop needing to prove. You stop needing to grasp. You begin to rest in the simplicity of being. This does not mean you become passive. It means you become free. Free to respond instead of react. Free to forgive. Free to let go of what no longer serves. Free to love without clinging. Free to live without fear of losing. And from this freedom, compassion flows not as a duty, but as your nature. You see others caught in the same nets you once lived in. You do not judge, you understand. And that understanding becomes your gift to the world. The breaking of fetters is the quiet revolution of the heart. It is the slow burn of liberation, the dismantling of illusion, the return to what is real. You do not need to finish it all today. You only need to begin with one breath, one act of forgiveness, one moment of awareness. And from there, the path unfolds, like light breaking through a clouded sky, like chains falling from a waking soul, like freedom remembered after a long forgetting. 16. The 5 hindrances clearing the inner path. You sit down to meditate. The room is quiet. The breath is soft. You close your eyes with the hope of finding peace. But within moments, the mind begins to stir. A pleasant memory floats in, then a fantasy. Suddenly, you're in a daydream, building castles in the sky. You pull yourself back. A few breaths later, irritation bubbles up. Someone's words from earlier replay in your head. Again, you return. But now, the body feels heavy. The mind dulls. You grow sleepy. You try to push through, but restlessness takes over. The urge to check your phone, to move, to stopall arise. Finally, a voice whispers, "This isn't working. Maybe I'm not meant for this." This is the battlefield of meditation, not dramatic, not loud, but profoundly human. The inner weather of the heart. The Buddha knew this struggle well. He named these forces the 5 hindrances nivarana, the mental states that cloud, clarity, block concentration, and derail our deepest aspirations. These hindrances are not moral failings. They are natural habits of mind, conditioned by years of craving, defense, and distraction. But if we are to walk the path of freedom, we must learn to recognize them not as enemies, but as teachers, not to fight them, but to understand them. For only in understanding do they begin to loosen their grip. Let us walk through each one like a quiet walk, through a forest of shadows, learning to meet them not with fear, but with presence. 1. Sensual desire, the shimmering mirage. The first hindrance is sensual desire, kamachanda. It appears as craving for sights, sounds, tastes, smells, touches, ideas. The mind latches onto something pleasant and begins to chase it. In meditation, it shows up subtly, the fantasy of success, the desire for a more beautiful experience, a craving for a certain feeling. It seduces. It promises happiness just around the corner if only we could have that thing, that sensation, that escape. But desire is like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. The Buddha compared sensual desire to borrowing money. You feel pleasure in the moment, but suffering comes later when it must be paid back. To work with desire, we don't have to suppress it. We observe it. We feel its pull. We name it. Desire is here. And then we gently return to the breath, not harshly, not with judgment, but with clarity. We ask ourselves, is this craving truly fulfilling, or is it a loop? With practice, we see through the illusion. We discover a deeper joy in it, not based on getting, but on being. 2. Ill will, the fire that burns within. The second hindrance is ill will, yapada. It arises as anger, resentment, frustration, hatred. It may be directed outward toward others, the world, injustice, or inward toward ourselves. Ill will contracts the heart. It poisons the breath. It breaks connection. In meditation, it shows up as tension in the chest, tightness in the jaw, the inability to settle. The mind replays arguments, nurses wounds, imagines revenge. Ill will says, if only they would change, I could be at peace. But in truth, it is not the world we must change it, is how we hold it. To work with ill will, we begin with awareness. Ah, anger is here. We feel it in the body. We notice its stories. We soften around it. Sometimes we practice meta-loving kindness. We bring to mind someone we love. We extend care. Then we try to include the difficult person, slowly, gently, not to excuse harm, but to free ourselves from the grip of hatred. As one teacher said, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other to die. Compassion is not weakness, it is liberation. 3. Sloth and torpor, the fog of mind. The third hindrance is sloth and torpor, thina mitha. Dullness, a heaviness, a mind that sinks instead of soars. In meditation, it feels like sleepiness, boredom, lack of energy. The body slouches, the breath fades, the mind goes blank. But sloth and torpor are not always physical. Sometimes it's spiritual weariness, sense of futility, a loss of inspiration. To work with it, we must first discern its cause. Is it lack of rest? Then rest. Is it mental laziness? Then energize. Sometimes opening the eyes, sitting up straight, walking, or reflecting on motivation can rekindle clarity. The Buddha offered a simile. A man trying to light a fire with wet wood, no matter how hard he tries, it won't catch. But with dry wood mindfulness, energy, interest the fire lights with ease. So we nourish alertness. We sit with dignity. We bring curiosity. And when tiredness returns, we greet it kindly not as failure, but as a visitor. 2-4. Restlessness and worry, the agitated sea. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and worry, udaka kukukucha. A restless heart, a mind that leaps like a monkey from branch to branch. It shows up as unease, nervous energy, looping thoughts. In meditation, it's the inability to stay in urgency to do something, fix something, go somewhere. Sometimes it's guilt over past actions. Sometimes it's fear about the future. Sometimes it's just the habit of movement. To work with restlessness, we begin by slowing down. We anchor in the breath. We feel the body, feet, hands, the weight of sitting. We say, here, now. We forgive ourselves for past mistakes. We remind ourselves, the past is gone. The future is unborn. This moment is enough. When restlessness is met with patience, it softens. When worry is met with kindness, it calms. Stillness is not the absence of movement, it is the freedom from being moved. 5. Doubt, the fog of uncertainty. The final hindrance is doubt, vichikicha. It is not the healthy questioning that seeks understanding. It is the paralytic voice that undermines everything. Am I doing this right? Is this practice working? Can I really be free? Who do I think I am? Doubt shakes the foundation. It erodes trust. It keeps us circling the gate, but never stepping through. But doubt, too, is a mind state, not truth. It arises, it passes. To work with doubt, we name it. This is doubt. We do not argue. We observe. We return to the breath. Sometimes we reflect on past growth moments of clarity, peace, insight. We recall, the path works, slowly, quietly, but it works. And if doubt persists, we seek guidance, see a teacher, a sangha, a wise friend. In time, confidence replaces confusion, not arrogance but a quiet knowing. The hindrances as teachers. The Buddha did not tell us to destroy the hindrances. He told us to understand them. They are not obstacles to practice, they are the practice. Each one points to a place in the heart that needs attention. Each one reveals a doorway to freedom. Desire shows us our longing for fulfillment. Ill will shows us our pain. Sloth shows us our need for balance. Restlessness shows us our fear. Doubt shows us our hunger for truth. With mindfulness, we don't react. We relate. We investigate. And slowly the hindrances lose their power not by force, but by understanding. Conclusion. Clearing the inner path. When the hindrances fade, even momentarily, something opens. The breath deepens. The heart softens. The mind becomes luminous, spacious, calm. We taste stillness not as a special event, but as our natural state, revealed when the clutter falls away. This is the promise of practice. Not that we will never be distracted, but that we will learn to return again and again with gentleness, to sit through desire and discover contentment, to breathe through anger and find compassion, to wake through sleepiness and feel energy, to rest in restlessness and touch peace, to move through doubt and realize truth. These are not small victories. They are the slow, steady unfolding of liberation. So the next time you sit and the mind begins its dance, do not despair. Smile. You are not failing. You are seeing clearly. And in that seeing, the path clears. And the heart remembers, freedom is not far. It is just behind the next breath. 17. The Brahma Viharas, the four immeasurable states of the awakened heart. In a world that often moves too fast, where the heart is easily bruised and the mind too quick to judge, we long for something deeper, something that restores the sacredness of our shared humanity. We search for a way to live with tenderness without being broken, to care without burning out, to feel joy without comparison, and to stay balanced even amid life's storms. The Buddha offered us a map not only for liberation, but for living with love. This map is not a theory or belief. It is a way of being, a set of 4 qualities that dwell in the awakened heart, vast and immeasurable, boundless like the sky. These are the Brahma Viharasta 4 divine abodhis, or the 4 immeasurables. They are not goals to be achieved, but states of heart to be cultivated and lived. Loving, kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, empathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. When these 4 arise, the heart becomes spacious. The boundaries between self and other soften. We become vessels of peace. But for many of us, these qualities are buried beneath layers of fear, resentment, shame, and restlessness. So how do we begin to uncover them? How do we awaken the heart? Loving kindness, metta, the gentle offering of goodwill. It begins with a whisper. May I be happy. May you be well. May all beings be at peace. Metta is not romantic love. It is not attachment. It is not sugary or sentimental. It is the sincere wish for well-being for ourselves, for those we love, for strangers, for those we find difficult, for all life. But often, we do not start with love. We start with pain. Perhaps we do not believe we are worthy of love. Perhaps we've been hurt too many times. Metta invites us to begin exactly where we are, with the broken heart, with the defensive mind, with the loneliness we try to ignore. We sit quietly. We place a hand over the heart. We repeat the phrases not to force a feeling, but to plant seeds. We say, may I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. Then we offer it to someone we love, then to a neutral person, then to someone we struggle with, then to all beings. Metta softens. It dissolves the illusion of separation. It does not mean we approve of harmful actions, but it means we refuse to let hatred define us. It is the most radical offering in a world of fear, the offering of unconditional goodwill, compassion, karuna, the tremble of the heart. If loving kindness is the wish for happiness, compassion is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. It is the response that says, I see your pain, I care, I will not turn away. Compassion arises naturally when metta meets suffering. We see someone struggling, a friend grieving, a stranger in crisis, even our own brokenness, and something in us moves. But compassion is not pity. It does not look down. It stands beside. It says, you are not alone, yet compassion can feel dangerous. The suffering of the world is vast. If we open too much, we fear we will drown. This is why true compassion must be paired with wisdom. We learn to feel fully without becoming overwhelmed. We do not take on the pain of others while meet it, like a mountain meeting the rain. In meditation, we cultivate compassion through phrases like, may you be free from suffering. May you find peace in the midst of pain. May your heart be soothed. We breathe into the suffering scars and others, not to fix it, but to hold it, to bear witness, to allow healing to begin. Compassion is not weakness. It is the highest strength of the heart. Empathetic joy, mudita, the celebration of another's happiness. The third Brahma Vihara is perhaps the rarest. Empathetic joy mudita. It is the ability to rejoice in the happiness of others. When a friend succeeds, when a stranger finds love, when a child laughs again, we feel joy. Not in contrast to our own, but as if it were ours too. Too often, comparison poisons our joy. We see others thrive and feel small. The ego says, what about me? Mudita invites a different response. How beautiful that happiness exists in the world, may it grow. This joy is not dependent on our own gain. It arises from the recognition that happiness is not a limited resource. We don't lose anything when others shine. In fact, we gain because our hearts expand. In meditation we say, may your success continue. May your joy deepen. May your good fortune benefit all. We practice mudita not only with people we love, but with those we envy. Slowly, jealousy softens. The heart learns to celebrate, To cultivate mudita is to become free from scarcity. It is to live in abundance, even when the world seems full of lack. Equanimity, apeka, the stillness within the storm. The final Brahmavihara is equanimitupeka. It is the balance that holds all the others. It is the spaciousness that allows love to endure. Equanimity is not indifference. It is not cold or detached. It is the wisdom that sees all things as they are arising and passing, joyful and painful, fair and unfair, and remain steady. It is the deep knowing, I care deeply, but I cannot control everything. End of quote. Equanimity is what allows us to love without clinging, to grieve without drowning, to act without expectation. In the face of injustice, we act with courage and clarity, but we do not harden. In the face of praise or blame, we remain grounded. We remember, all things change. All beings walk their own path. In practice, we say, all beings are the heirs of their karma. Their happiness and suffering depend on their actions, not on my wishes. May I meet life with wisdom and peace. Equanimity does not mean we stop feeling. It means we feel fully and stay free. Living the four divine abodes. When the Brahmaviharas are alive in us, something shifts. The way we speak becomes kinder. The way we listen becomes deeper. The way we respond to pain or own and others becomes more spacious. In daily life, these qualities do not appear in perfect symmetry. Some days compassion overflows. Other days, equanimity carries us. Some moments demand fierce love. Others ask us to rejoice in silence. These four are not rules, they are refuges. We return to them when we feel lost. We rest in them when the world feels sharp. We offer them when nothing else seems to work. In truth, they are not separate. Each supports the others. Loving kindness gives birth to compassion. Compassion deepens into equanimity. Equanimity allows joy. Joy feeds love. Together, they are the architecture of an awakened heart. Conclusion: a boundless heart. The Buddha called these four states immeasurable because they have no limit. There is no end to the love we can offer, no boundary to the compassion we can feel, no cap on the joy we can share, no edge to the stillness we can embody. And the more we cultivate them, the more we see. They were never outside us. They are our original nature, covered only by fear, forgetfulness, and pain. To return to them is to return to ourselves. To live from them is to be truly free. So we practice Sino to become better, but to remember what we already are. A heart that wishes well, a heart that cares, a heart that celebrates, a heart that rests in peace. May you walk in loving kindness. May you respond with compassion. May you rejoice in others' joy. May you rest in equanimity. And may your heart become vast wide enough to hold this world just as it is. 18. Dependent origination, seeing the chain of suffering. Why is there suffering? This question echoes at the heart of human life. Beneath our ambitions, our worries, and even our joys lies a deeper inquiry: why does pain arise, and what keeps it returning? The Buddha answered not with myth or dogma, but with radical clarity. He laid bare the mechanics of suffering in a teaching both profound and subtle, known as Paticca Samuppada dependent origination, the interwoven chain of causes that gives birth to human misery and the world of samsara. This teaching is not merely philosophy, it is a mirror held to the mind. It shows how we create the conditions of our own bondage and how, by seeing clearly, we begin to unmake them. When we understand this chain not as abstract theory, but as the unfolding of every moment, we begin to taste liberation. Let us look deeply, not with fear, but with quiet curiosity, into this chain of becoming. The chain of becoming. Dependent origination unfolds in 12 links, each giving rise to the next, like fire passed from torch to torch. This cycle explains not just rebirth in a literal sense, but how, in every moment, we recreate suffering through ignorance and craving. Ignorance, avijja. The chain begins in darkness, not knowing things as they are, not knowing the Four Noble Truths, not seeing impermanence, suffering, and non-self. This is not intellectual ignorance, it is the primal forgetting of reality. 2. Volitional formations, sankhara. From ignorance arise mental formations habits, impulses, karmic tendencies. These are the seeds of action shaped by past ignorance. Sand, consciousness, vijnana. The stream of awareness that continues from moment to moment. It is colored by the formations before it, conditioned by karma. 4. Name and form, nama rupa. Consciousness gives rise to mind and body, the psycho-physical organism. Name refers to feeling, perception, intention, contact, attention. Form is the body. 5. Six sense bases, sahayatana. With name and form arise the six sense dorsi, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These are the gateways to the world. 6. Contact phassa. When sense bases meet objects, contact is born. Eye meets form, ear meets sound, mind meets thought. 7. Feeling, vedana. Contact gives rise to feeling pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is the seed of craving. 8. Craving, tanha. From feeling, craving arises. Wanting the pleasant to continue, the unpleasant to stop, the neutral to become stimulating. Craving fuels the fire. Jo, clinging, upadana. Craving hardens into clinging, grasping at views, rituals, identities, desires. It is the glue of suffering. 10. Becoming bhava. Clinging leads to becoming a new state of existence, a renewed identity, the karmic momentum that shapes our next moment. 11. Birth, yati. Becoming culminates in birth, not only literal birth, but the arising of a self, a new narrative. I am this. 12. Old age and death, jara, marana, and with birth comes decay, sorrow, lamentation, despair, the inevitable suffering of impermanence. Thus the wheel turns, again and again, not only from life to life, but moment to moment, breath to breath. The cycle in daily life. It may seem distant, but we live this cycle dozens of times a day. You are walking down the street. A memory arises. You feel a pang of regret, contact, feeling. You crave relief, craving. You reach for your phone, clinging. You distract yourself, becoming. You scroll and scroll. You forget your sadness. But a few minutes later, you feel restless. You wonder why. This is dependent origination, not in metaphysical terms, but as the architecture of suffering in your own heart. Each time we react blindly to feelings pleasant or painful, we are caught in the wheel. We create a self, defend it, feed it, mourn it. But what happens when we pause? What happens when, in the moment of craving, we do not react but observe? Then the cycle halts. A space opens, and through that space, freedom is born. Breaking the chain, the beauty of dependent origination lies in its symmetry. If suffering arises through conditions, it can cease when those conditions are removed. Just as ignorance leads to volitional formations, wisdom can lead to peace. The Buddha said, "Who sees dependent origination sees the Dhamma. Who sees the Dhamma sees dependent origination." This is not a riddle. It is an invitation. See clearly, and you are already walking the path. So how do we break the chain? It begins not with force, but with awareness. We bring mindfulness to feeling that tender link between contact and craving. We notice, this is pleasant, this is unpleasant, and we pause. We do not suppress desire. We do not cling to aversion. We simply observe. And in that moment, craving weakens. Clinging dissolves. Becoming stops. A new path appears. This is the path of insight, the path of patience, the path of freedom, wisdom as the antidote. At the root of the chain is ignorance, the forgetting of what is. The Buddha did not awaken by changing the world. He awakened by seeing clearly. He saw, all things arise and pass. All things are empty of self. All suffering begins with clinging to what is impermanent. And so, we practice not to gain something new, but to remember what has always been true. We cultivate right view-seeing, the Four Noble Truths. We meditate not to escape life, but to observe it closely, gently, We listen to our reactivity and soften it. We study the links not in books, but in the rising and falling of our own breath, our own cravings, our own stories. And slowly, wisdom grows. Not as belief, but as knowing. Not as dogma, but as direct seeing. Conclusion. Freedom is conditioned. 2. One of the most profound realizations in the Buddha's teaching is this. Just as suffering is conditioned, so too is liberation. When mindfulness is present, ignorance fades. When wisdom is cultivated, craving dissolves. When craving ends, clinging cannot take root. When clinging ceases, becoming has no soil. When becoming ends, birth does not arise. And when there is no birth, there is no death, no sorrow, no despair. This is not a fantasy. This is the possibility of awakening in every moment. The cycle turns, but it can also unwind. And the turning point is always now. So next time you feel that familiar panga desire, a resentment, a rush to act, pause, look inward. Ask, what is arising? And watch how the chain moves or breaks. You do not need to be perfect. You need only to see. And in that seeing, the wheel begins to slow. The heart begins to rest. And the timeless truth becomes clear. That which is born of ignorance can be unlearned. That which arises through craving can be let go. And the one who sees clearly is already free. 19. Nibbana, the unshakable peace beyond suffering. What lies beyond the last link of the chain? Beyond birth and death? Beyond craving and becoming? Beyond the ceaseless motion of mind? For those who have walked the path of mindfulness, studied the Four Noble Truths, cultivated the Eightfold Path, loosened the fetters, softened the hindrances, and sat patiently through the storms of inner life. What is the final destination? The Buddha called it Nibbana. In Sanskrit, nirvana literally, to extinguish, as one extinguishes a flame. But what is extinguished? Not life, not awareness, but the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, the fire of becoming, the fire of restlessness, the fire of the false self, endlessly seeking and grasping. And what remains when these flames are gone? Peace, stillness, unconditioned freedom. This is Nibbana, not a heaven in the sky, not an afterlife, not a void, but the direct experiential end of suffering. It is the cooling of the heart, the return to what is beyond birth and death. It is the realization that nothing more is needed, nothing more is lacking. There is no one to become, nothing to gain, nothing to fear. Yet this teaching is often misunderstood. People ask, is Nibbana annihilation? Is it nothingness? Number. It is not annihilation, it is liberation. Liberation from what is not real. Let us step gently into this mystery. Let us walk slowly with reverence into this final teaching. The problem: misunderstanding liberation. Throughout the journey, we have clung to becoming. We have measured progress. We have sought peace. Yes, but always as a goal. Even meditation becomes a form of craving. So when we hear Nibbana is the cessation of becoming, we resist. Something in us contracts. Will I still be me? Will I still feel joy? Will I still live? These questions arise because we imagine Nibbana as subtractionism, a loss of something precious. But what if it is the opposite? What if Nibbana is not the absence of self, but the absence of suffering? What if it is not a subtraction from life, but the unveiling of its deepest nature? We suffer not because life is painful, but because we resist its impermanence, its unpredictability, its openness. We want to grasp what cannot be held. We want to define what cannot be defined. Nibbana is the moment the grasping stops. Not because we suppress desire, but because we finally see through it. We see every moment is already whole. Every breath is already enough. And in that moment, there is no need for I or mine or should. There is only freedom, development, the experience of Nibbana. But what does this freedom feel like? The Buddha described Nibbana not in abstract terms, but through its effects. There is, monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned. Were there not, there would be no escape from the born, the become, the made, the conditioned. It is the unshakable peace that arises when the conditioned falls away. It is not ecstatic, it is not a trance, it is not floating in light or merging into cosmic energy. It is simplicity, stillness, the complete absence of suffering, not because the world has changed, but because our relationship to it has. Imagine sitting in a storm but being untouched by wind or rain. Imagine standing in the fire but being unburned. Imagine the mind like a still lacino, ripples of greed, no waves of anger, no fog of delusion. That is the taste of Nibbana. In the Pali Canon, when a disciple attains Nibbana, they are described as unshaken by gain or loss, praise or blame, fame or disrepute, pleasure or pain. They live, speak, eat, walk, but the clinging has ended. The flame is out, and yet they are more alive than ever. Not in the way of excitement or passion, but in the way of full presence. Nothing to prove, nothing to fear, nothing to protect, only freedom. The gradual path, most do not experience Nibbana in a single flash. For most, it is a gradual kulinga, slow, steady ripening of wisdom and letting go. The Buddha taught that awakening unfolds in stages. Stream, enterer, once, returner, non-returner, arahant. Each stage cuts deeper into the roots of delusion. Each one loosens more of the fetters, and with each loosening, suffering decreases. You may already know moments of Nibbana fleeting glimpses. A breath when craving falls away, a moment of forgiveness when hatred dissolves, a meditation when the mind is fully still. These are not yet full Nibbana, but they are tastes. They show you freedom is not far. It is not something to achieve in another lifetime. It is here when the causes of suffering are removed. Every time you observe a feeling without grasping, you step closer. Every time you choose compassion over anger, you step closer. Every time you stop chasing what will not satisfy you, are resting in the cooling light of the unconditioned. Dispelling misconceptions, people fear Nibbana because they mistake the end of ego for the end of joy. But ego is not the source of joy, it is the source of fear, of comparison, of anxiety. True joy is quiet. It arises when there is no I to defend, no me to build, no inner war to wage. Nibbana does not remove your personality. It removes your delusion. You may still laugh, you may still cry, but there is no more suffering in these movements. They come and go like waves on the ocean, beautiful, fleeting, ungrasped. Others ask, what happens to the person who attains Nibbana at death? The Buddha remains silent on this. Why? Because the question is framed in terms of self, and Nibbana is beyond the self. He taught us to stop asking, where do I go? And begin asking, what remains when craving ends? The answer is not a place, not a being, but freedom. Conclusion. The end of the path is the beginning of peace. The Buddha did not teach Nibbana as an escape from life, but as a return to it, without confusion. He did not ask us to give up joy, but to give up craving, which steals joy. He did not want us to become saints in the clouds but human beings, deeply alive, deeply awake. He showed us that suffering begins with clinging and ends when we stop clinging, that what we seek is already hair beneath the layers of fear and habit, and that the path to Nibbana is not a mountain to climb, but a fire to let burn out. You may never know the exact moment the flame ends. You may never find a word for it, but you will know peace. You will know freedom. You will know a love that needs nothing in return. You will know a silence that holds all sound. You will know the place where there is nothing to fear, nothing to want, and nothing to become. And you will be home, not in another world, but here, in this breath, in this moment, in the unshakable peace of a heart that has finally remembered itself. 20. The flame and the silence, living the truth beyond words. There comes a moment on the path when all the teachings fall silent, not because they are untrue, but because they have done their work. They have pointed the way, they have steadied the feet, they have lit the lamp, and now the flame burns quietly on its own. You sit not as a seeker, not as a meditator, not even as a self, but simply as presence. The breath moves, the heart beats, the world turns, and nothing more needs to be said. This is the quiet after the storm, not of exhaustion, but of clarity. The clear sky after clouds have passed. The deep river beneath the chatter of thought. The timeless space between moments. This is where the Dhamma becomes more than a teaching. It becomes a way of being, a silence that speaks louder than words, a truth that no longer needs defending. We call it awakening, but even that word falls short, because it's not something that happens to you. It's what remains when you dissolve, the vanishing point of language. Throughout this journey, we've relied on words: suffering, craving, wisdom, liberation. But every word is a finger pointing, every metaphor a bridge. And at some point, even the most beautiful teaching must be let go like a raft after crossing the river. The Buddha said, "My teaching is like a snake. If grasped wrongly, it can bite, but held wisely, it leads to safety." And when you reach the other shore, you don't carry the snake. You bow to it, and you walk on. What is left, then, when even the teachings dissolve? Only the flame, only the stillness, only the direct, wordless knowing that cannot be spoken but is felt in every breath, in the smile given without expectation, in the tears shed without shame, in the wind brushing against your skin on an ordinary afternoon. That is the Dhamma too, the simplicity of the awakened life. The awakened ones are not gods. They are not cloaked in light. They do not hover above the earth. They cook, they sweep, they greet strangers. They walk under the same sky, but something in them is different. There is no longer anyone inside trying to become something. No me at the center, comparing, defending, craving. No resistance to what arises. No clinging to what passes. They are like fire giving warmth without asking, like water flowing freely, taking the shape of the moment, like space fast, open, untouched. Their presence teaches without words. Their silence says everything. To be near them is to feel your own stillness awaken. To hear them laugh is to remember joy without reason. To see them walk is to understand freedom, not as escape, but as intimacy with life. The flame that burns quietly. Nibbana is often described as the extinguishing of the flame. But what if it is not the end of fire, but the end of burning? Not the end of light, but the end of fever? Imagine a flame that gives warmth but no smoke, that dances but does not consume. That lights the world, not from effort, but from nature. That is the awakened mind. It doesn't grasp for anything. It doesn't resist anything. It simply burns clear, kind, bright, and in its light, others remember their own. Because this path is not about becoming special. It's about becoming simple. To live a life so inwardly uncluttered that truth reveals itself in everything. In the curve of a leaf, in the quiet of dusk, in the pause between thoughts, in the way you listen, in the way you breathe, in the way you are with others when no one is watching, returning to the present as sacred ground. In the end, awakening is not found in distant visions. It's not hidden in texts or reached in future lifetimes. It is here, in this body, in this breath, in this unrepeatable, ungraspable moment. The miracle is not elsewhere. It is that anything exists at all, that you can feel pain and not turn away, that you can love and not need to possess, that you can sit with no reason and no peace. The world still moves, the news still breaks, the body still ages, the seasons still change, but the clinging stops. And in that stopping, the world returns to sacredness. Each sound becomes a bell. Each movement becomes a prayer. Each person becomes a mirror, living the Dhamma without pretense. You do not need to call yourself a Buddhist to live the Dhamma. You do not need robes, or mantras, or vows. You need only sincerity and the willingness to be awake, to speak with integrity, to listen with humility, to act with compassion, to see clearly, moment by moment, what leads to suffering and what leads away from it, and to follow the thread of truth wherever it leads, even when it's hard, even when it's quiet, even when no one else sees. That is the true Dhamma practicena, the outer rituals, but the inner revolution, not the appearance of peace, but the willingness to face what is, not the performance of wisdom, but the silence where wisdom grows, the unspeakable gift. So now we cite at the end of words, where everything has been said and nothing needs to be. If you've walked this far, then you know the teachings are not something to finish. They are something to live, a day at a time, a breath at a time. The Buddha's final words were simple. All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence. This is not a command. It is a blessing. The path is not about escaping life. It is about being fully here with clarity, with love, with courage. Let the teachings fade like footprints in sand. Let the flame burn without smoke. Let the silence speak. And let your life, your simple human life, become the final verse in this sacred poem. May it be a verse of peace. May it be a verse of freedom. May it be a verse of truth beyond words. Returning home to the present moment. So now, dear one, we arrive together at the quiet edge of this journey. 3 hours of breath and silence, of story and insight, of ancient wisdom remembered through the rhythm of your own heart. We began in suffering not as punishment, but as a doorway. We explored its roots, ignorance, craving, clinging. We walked the eightfold path, step by step, right view, right speech, right effort, laying stones of mindfulness beneath our feet. We met the hindrances with kindness, the fetters with courage. We opened the heart through the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And finally, we stood before the mystery of Nibbonathe, unshakable peace that arises when nothing more needs to be grasped, and the heart rests in freedom. This was not a lesson to memorize, but a mirror for your life, a reflection of your capacity to awaken, to soften, to let go, to see clearly. You may not remember every word, that's okay, but if, in some quiet place within you, a new seed has been planted, a deeper breath, a more tender gaze, a slower pace, a gentler response, then the Dhamma is alive. It lives not in books or monasteries or even teachings, but in how you meet this moment. When you pause in anger instead of reacting, the path is alive. When you forgive yourself after failing, the path is alive. When you see beauty in the ordinary, or smile at your breath, or place a hand over your heart and whisper, this too is part of the way, the Buddha walks beside you. This isn't the end. This is a return home to stillness, to presence, to love without conditions. So may you walk gently. May you befriend the silence. May you trust the wisdom already in you. May you offer peace, even in small ways, to a restless world. And may you always remember, you are not broken. You are on the path, and the path is within you.